Hello, this is the live. It is started now. So I will go ahead and we will get ready for this live. I have a list as usual, and we're going to go over what you already thought we are going to go over, which is about mass shootings again. This title of this episode is, of course, about mass shootings. So there is a warning that is figurative and also emotional. So unfortunately, there's a whole background, a shock that you will just not understand if you were not there. If you're not feeling well, just step away right now. Step away right now, obviously. So the title of this episode is Should the Courts Be Able to Make People Forget About Being Mass Shooting Survivors? Let's go through today on what was the best option to go and do this new episode here. And the premise was so daunting, in fact, never been answered before, was so relative that I just had to. No one else seemed to have any focus or attention on the matter as to do it. So here we go. This is the fourth episode. The first, second, and third episodes. The first was about can God do anything but a gunshot wound? Of course, a lot of these are figurative and not in any way, shape, or form supposed to or support an argument based on your own cognition. The second episode was, or should, mass shooting survivors or victims or gunshot victims be able to drive cars with a car license? The third there was about none other than mass shooters. Let's see if we can look it down here. What does it mean? Let's go back to YouTube and see what it was about, because obviously these are somewhat relevant to today. So there is that. So the last video we had here was related towards what does it mean to be an undocumented, unofficial mass shooting victim, and obviously that's another one that had never come up. So this episode is devoted towards those in mass shootings, obviously, but obviously plays into the catalog idea of what it means to be in modern America today and what it means to experience such a crime as being a mass shooting victim and survivor. So here we go. So we'll, I suppose, go on to the conjecture. Yesterday's episode was absolutely hallucinogenic, according to the AI computer, as I read through the transcripts, and it dubitably did not believe that there was any reality between mathematics and ethics. Ironically. Okay, so what today's episode is on is that should the courts be able to make people forget or rescind ideas about being mass shooting survivors? And it's a tricky question off the bat. You will say, no, there is no ethical, concerning way as a ethical, person or ethical, individual who relates to academia, work, a life balance, right? A life cycle that is normal. Would not believe in the ethics of being able to forget via the courts as a court, agreement, contract, an NDA, as you put it, non-disclosure agreement, saying, "Oh no, you'll forget about this mass shooting as a survivor, right?" So that's, I guess, for military conduct. I guess for disordered children. Forget about it. Obviously, straight back to like movies. Oh no, you'll forget about this mass shooting. Should it happen? Should it not happen? But we'll go back into the others. I mean, you forget about the survivability of, let's say, police conduct You're in a car with some bad guys. You're a very honest individual, and multiple people are killed, or someone's killed in the crossfire. Are you bound to forget? Are you bound to forget about someone's identity? And we'll go into a couple of those things, right? So there is the illusion that says, one doesn't make one right, and therefore you will not forget about mass shootings. There is the other insight that says, no, it is to protect people's identity and protect people's, chivalry, right? So imagine going to another country and operating with, private information, being in one of these, issues, and then, leaving. Would you then be able to retain that information collectively? Well, not always. If you were from Iran, if you're from China, if you're from any country that has been closed on its border for a very long time, or let's say a very foreign body, it might be very difficult, especially with telecommunications. I mean, there's plenty of things, and you would probably say the probability of that is because of the niceties. I mean, it's probably the lack of communication, lack of testing, or lack of reasonable response within the government of your own, right? They should really take care of it pretty much. So the principle of courts being able to forget about mass shootings goes away. When you look at the Constitution, the First Amendment says you have the freedom of speech, no matter what you say, no matter what you relate to, no matter what you care about, what you feel or believe. Right? It could be religion. It could be a few things. But it doesn't really talk, the Constitution doesn't talk about certain things like, let's say, conservatorships, or if, let's say you're aggressive so much, they basically say, oh, no, you can no longer hold or manage these ideas because you're violent. You might be a drunk, you might be someone else, but you're placed in maybe what they consider the police station, the alcohol tank. You're waiting over for 24, 36 hours until you get sober. Maybe in a small town, in a real city, you're going to be arrested and put on the spot as observed, right? So the principle or the reality, I mean, whatever words you want to put there, or if you're opposing the point of the actual ethics of the conversation, you might as well pack your suitcase and start writing books or something. But the reality there is, it's a tricky question. I mean, in a public place, should you be able, and this is another ethical question and dilemma, should you be able to talk, or is that protection enough to talk about something like this? You'd say yeah and no, but the potential there is, in a public place, you have the resources to do such a thing. Not normal. I wouldn't think you would normally have the resources because you live in a huge city. You live in a huge place. It's Earth. Everything is cram packed, and the principle there is that the resources or your liabilities, your financial, reasons, basically your wants and needs, and spatially or collectively, you're able to account for more by putting more work into something. But rescinding that through time, through object fear or something coming on, that would be crazy, right? So you're planning out not just a military operation, you're planning out the contingency of something circling around, right? And there's not exactly that as a contingent for a normal person, because a normal person would say, hey, not okay with me. But a real life person would say, the novice choice is to always protect people in front of you. And they'll say the novice choice is always to protect, first responders, right? But what if the communication channels are not as aligned as they say? They're crossing boundaries, crossing spatial recognition is one of those things. But the reality there, I mean, even though everyone has a watch, everyone has their own time zone, their own name, I think that's usually enough to not cross any boundaries. And they also have segments of time throughout the day, and they have choices, right? But the principle there is, the military has certain things that go with certain ideas, which is frequency, experimental, media, experimental technology. But people don't normally have those ranges. It's not offered to them, even though it's fairly important. So, I mean, you could do a little research online, and you could look at technology needs, but you do know business intelligence technology is usually separate. The principle there, does show some sort of fear, as certain systems aren't supposed to go together, right? They're not supposed to just be able to break. They're not just supposed to break over time. They're not what they're made for. Someone doesn't make your refrigerator or your stove in China and expect it to break. I guess, right? They're selling goods at the matter of being able to maintain a product, but it's not simply meant to break. These contracts fall apart. So there is a contract involved in certain places, and NDAs are disclosed for certain reasons. So, you're looking at a loophole almost. If you were a mass shooting survivor and an unknown, that you're falling through a loophole that is, it's basically not going to be an NDA because it's going to be against any law. You go to China, they're not going to find and follow that law. It says, you're a mass shooting survivor, but the obvious question is the loophole of being able to be a repeat offender or do something daunting like someone who's homeless, right? They might be in a lot of casualties. In a way, because it might be relatable to drugs, it might be relatable to success, it might be relatable to the feigning or selling of drugs, right? Because the principle there has already been cured, but the principle is also not what they consider eliminated, right? An employee applying the same mathematics as the government for their own principle happens all the time. In the United States, it happens all the time. That's where we get into these corrupt cases with like food stamps or case management for people with kids, welfare. And generally speaking, welfare is usually just a typical small amount of money if you were in a work program. Most cases, right? And the victim funds are very also low, but therefore necessities beyond segment of thought or reimbursement for someone's homicide, right? So the principle there, tells you, there's not a way to really solve the issue there of finding, segregated versus non-segregated data or information. You're looking at personal data, a lot of variables that don't have names. Like you don't say unknown mass shooting survivor. There's not a variable for that, right? But there is one for a lot of things. Automobiles, certain things like bikes aren't usually covered. Maybe not in English. The kids, they're not covered either. They don't have a lot of variables for certain things. Like I laid to rest my wife, or I laid to rest my husband, or my parents, or something like that. There isn't really a one for kids, and it's really written into the English scheme of things. Led baby Christian to their grave or something, or I led baby baby dove to the grave. She was my dove. So it's not as humorous as you might think. It's fumbling, right? It's lacking language, but that elemental framework is still there. And if it's ever been proved before, and it just collectivizes the real solution there, but you have business to back up the support, saying there was dependent on some sort of agreement. There's some agreement, and that helped with the language support, even though there were more than one company doing it. So on some level, you can see that anything can transcend, such as mass shootings. You look at, Billy the Kid and how he killed people, rather than, relating them to Clint Eastwood, relating them to, somebody in the military who took their life, saving the country. Someone like Chris Kyle, the irony is very similar to this, as though he dies in the United States of America, gunshot veteran, but he is, the top in Tiana of finding and taking care of the bad guys. And the bad guys, we mean the people who hunted, killed, murdered. They were the top list people he went after, not just some regular strangers he went and tried to go find, right? So that was his unit. But the possibility of finding a way to scratch every little thing off and say, hey, enough is enough, and then no more. It just doesn't, and it will never work that way. It should pretty much never work that way. The policy, the makeover, the quality of life and concern, that's the bigger part, right? So if you are lacking communication and, this idea, and we're kind of going a summary up to this episode of last, you're not really going to find yourself in a quotable or realistic way. It's like, talking through a screen. Would you rather talk to a screen or get your quotes right? That wouldn't even make sense to a normal person. If you kept on having phone calls every time, you're going to have radiation poisoning, you're going to have security loss, you're going to have a lot of things that just don't make sense to a normal person, right? So the principle there is, again, it's not having an affair. It's not having the diligent. It's not having a choice, right? It's not having polite mindset. It's about doing what's corrective in a way. And that corrective part is just the same as the telephone call. You are doing, less of the work for certain things and doing some of the work for certain things as well. So, your liabilities change, your ideas change a little bit, but in the end, right, electronics are basically radioactive, so therefore they're not always good to be around, right? They might have the gamma rays or whatever it is. It's just kind of bad for you, right? Microwave can be bad for you, right? So the principle or the choice or the option there or the net is really about finding significant ideas, maybe as a way to measure the moment, which is also difficult because there's not a lot of buyers for that choice, right? Not a lot of viewers, which we think is viewers, but we don't know because in a world like today, I mean, they use so much VPNs and might say, oh, the guy told me VPNs are signed by contract. But what does a guy know if he doesn't know this story? If he doesn't know the last story? I don't think these things really work that way because, in the end, there's the beginning. In the beginning, there's the end, in a way, as a kind of figurative moment, as like you're looking at narration. But, that's the purpose of what you're trying to accomplish by working in this industry, working in media. Right. So it's not about, jumping, to the conclusion or forcing everything up. Stories are stories and stories tell you different things. Right. So, I mean, one guy might say, I took the hot top hunt show and he's dead now. The other guy said, no, I was a first responder in the United States of America, and I took care of the Al Qaeda member, and I was the one who shot. Like, it's a figurative moment. And if you're afraid of the word moment, welcome to business etiquette 501. But moment is a type of business, right? So that's a type of business strategy right there. It's adaptive management. So if anyone has a management job right now and didn't know that, maybe it's time to get a new job. So let's go over the ideas right here. So should the courts be able to make people forget about being mass shooting survivors? And first of all, you say no. Are you drug addled? Are you in a war environment? Are you getting put out of the situation? Like, I'm putting you out, but I'm not going to kill you. I mean, you're just going to forget for a while. I mean, it might sound good and like crazy and fun, but I mean, it sounds borderline to me. I mean, making somebody forget about being in mass shooting sounds borderline. So, the principle there saying the courts have, basically passed this measure, passed this idea to make people forget. And then, transcending the idea towards, something like including it with something. It's obscure, right? So, I mean, let's say that is on the notary, for somebody who with, onset dementia or some sort of, illness that isn't related to antisocial disorder. Would they say, that's so dementiated, I couldn't really rest the idea. I couldn't understand what you were saying. I couldn't, find a function behind it. Well, like, oh, look at this. This is a phone. Look up the mass shooting and go identify it. Hey, what do you do then when you can't identify it? B, what if they're looking like they said, find one witness in the attack? Like, oh, that guy's dead. There should be another witness. Like, I just can't do it, right? So the principle kind of goes on shock and awe. It's like an attacking opponent, but it's supposed to be the easiest one to eliminate. It's kind of like back in German, warfare. That's what they used to do to attack the opponents. That's how they invaded Ireland or Britain, and a lot of people don't know they invaded there either. So the principle there is, we are far away from those ideas in a way. Why would someone do that? And you ask yourself, does that just mean the white power, people, the people who are, AKA Nazis? Well, not really. So, I mean, look at modern America today, and I don't think this is a very open subject, but you will find any power group using this idea of shock and awe. Anyone using a way to victimize their opponent in a way, and I'm not talking about it just has to be power and power information. Any news media anchor does use this technology trend. The president might use this trend. The idea of the VP might use this trend, or someone else higher up might use this trend. But the principle then again, or the common ground, shock and awe, finding a way to create hesitation and resilience. And I'm not saying any power group that's connected to colors. Again, there are other people who use that idea as well, and they might say not power group, power control information have tendently gone together since the Renaissance, since the early modern Europe, and it keeps on a foundation within our language, at least our choices, our habits, our migrations. And if suffice to say, there was a new idea out, like all the lake water dried up and everyone started hitting drugs all the time, then maybe. But it's simply not that simple, right? I mean, in philosophical soundness of history, and I study history, I basically have a history degree. I'd say, yeah, it is a possibility, and most thoughts that are formably created have some sort of, optimal, reason, right? So I'm not saying no. There's always a turning point, though, in history, some sort of foundation, not just a delusion. So we're talking about some delusions, right? So the court has hesitated and put everything down on a charter saying, these are common grounds and these are common principles. So the other angle says, if these are common grounds and these are common angles, why can't for I use these common grounds and angles to get the drug addict down the street off the drugs? They're hanging out on the pier again and they're doing whatever drugs they want to. I don't really want that. And I told the judge, I would like this person to be arrested for the rest of their life and quit using drugs until they have the honest option to quit. And the judge might grant it in some sort of severe punishment kind of manifest. And that's what we're talking about, severe punishment. Right, but the policy, the overhead, the quillness of the lawyer attorney to oppose it as like a commitment to or in law also has the same gerrymandering power as somebody, any voter or anyone representing the government in the branch for the House or something like that. So there is a huge question there of what that means. What is a common ground if it's elusive, it has no territory, and it's separative? You're tearing the subject apart because it's not in principle real, right? You wouldn't just use the word detached because it can be detached and added to something else. No, it's a foreign identity. It's a foreign idea because these matriarchal ideas are in the Magna Carta, right? So you take the Magna Carta, you read the idea of detachment, you're looking at an elusive point. You're looking at something so formidable, it's been written with weed ink. These ideas are so ridiculous to look back in time. You're asking elusive points of the idea of detachment. I mean, yeah, in some ways, some governments do this, right? But they're based on, the ruling power, maybe the lords, maybe something else. But when it goes down to it, they are poor people. They had millions of people die. But this idea of transcending this principle is, again, not something new. And it might be part of cleansing, right? So cleansing the idea as though, let's say you're living in the Black Plague and they say your cure is, such and such and urine, right? So there's the bad, obviously. And then there's, what they consider cleansing, like, the Renaissance or the White Knights there. And again, there's a whole part of history that's missing. It's not black or white. It's mixed still, and it's it's daunting still. But there is the idea of a lower class, so it is confusing. And as a history book, you don't formally see every language. You don't see everything that was made 1,500 years ago, clearly, and it doesn't show you that. But also, time has been had, and you have realistic decay in your life. The soil might be worse than ours now, and ours is fresh, like modern turf or rock you've never eaten before. So, the policy of the courts to decide what is wrong and what is right is really fundamental on the area in which you live, right? The fundamental area also, to say a lot about who you are, what your identity is, which you always need to separate because they are grounding ways or ideas to keep your security in place, right? To ground your time, your observation, what you're giving away versus what you're trying to conclude with, right? But that doesn't necessarily sound normal. It doesn't sound like back in the day they didn't do these things at all, and it's a modern idea. Well, that's kind of true, right? I mean, that expansive technology shouldn't just fit with everyone, right? It shouldn't fit every single thing on earth that should just kind of create a policy over time through figurative stories, ideas, etc. There isn't one, two, three. It's basically what you're saying is like instant bank robbery, right? So if there was no reason to buy things, why would there be a reason to do things, right? So the politeness or the policy overhead might be considered like, something like cryptocurrency. And there are a lot of laws by it, but why are there a lot of laws if there should already be more laws? And why are the laws just now starting? So you got to think, one thing expires, one thing starts, but one thing doesn't expire because it's unreal. It's real because it's had. It should be past tense, right? It doesn't mean it's had future. It's all just past tense, right? The professional here is always seeking something new. The student is always seeking something advisory, right? The professor is always seeking something um, not less frustrating, but more courageous, right? And then the parents are always seeking something polite, right? The community member is always seeking something frustration-free, or as well as advisory. A mixture of all of them, and then I wouldn't say elder, but I mean, say, somebody past their half life or past the potential of what somebody has earned in their half life, right? You're creating something so new. You're spending time with other people, or you're spending time with the acknowledgement or the phrase, catching up, finding a way to stay dependent on other people's needs, right? You're part of society. It's not just controlling effort, but what they want is also controlling effort. They want an effort that is realized between what you see and what you can do. And a lot of that plays into the forensic adaptation. When you say forensic, or I say forensic adaptation, I mean the adaptation to get better, to get well, or to get weller, right? I mean, you're finding a way to lie away to do an audit on yourself, right? But it's not about 1 to 1, right? We don't make up numbers. We don't make up businesses, right? So the court's eyes are not court realized eyes, right? They're not ideas to make up, right? So you can't make up something because you feel awful, right? Because you stole all your parents' money, you can't make something up. And just because you didn't make amends for it one day, or didn't make the policy say, hey, we're even now, it doesn't mean it's just made up, right? But if someone makes up a story about affinity, or like the idea of being awful, right, there's not really much you can do in the court's eyes, right? But the idea of the court's eyes is they follow through the traditional steps, right? Traditional steps like appealing in code. You're doing an idea of horizon, finding a way to go from the family to the self ego, or finding a way to not hesitate, but find a horizon, or find a way to stay central, right? Like within your belief systems, or finding a way to correspond towards those matters in a way that is less frustrating, or find out why. So the government finding a way to dot two I's at the same time and kind of make it up, kind of like watching a video and saying like, I'm going to talk to my favorite actor on the screen. You're kind of like, yeah. Or my documentary maker and say, yeah. Or, my teacher and say, yeah. Or, find a way to talk to someone who is real and not real, or making up ideas or events, or like presuming something without a hypothesis, right? In a way, I mean, the narrative has always been a hypothesis. You're involved with it. You're finding a story you believe in. You speak language. You speak, ideas that are going to live on in your mind forever. I mean, the ideas you can remember. At least there's no reason you shouldn't forget, or you should forget, right? There's no idea that you should forget if it has, a sake, or an identity, or name, or things like that. So, the principle or the common metaphor for that usage is, aggregates, right? What you have is what you have as a demand, right? It's like a function. Okay. So the court's presuming something innocent is one thing. And the idea of presuming innocent means that they won't want people to forget something, right? Their idea or metaphor is the shining light, so to speak. And that's, conclusive, as though it kind of points to the Constitution. It kind of points to the direct math that formed the Constitution, pretty much. But the ability to kind of work with bills of rights, amendments, those are non-escapist, right? Those are routes for freedom, control, liberties, ethic. I won't say mathematics, but I would definitely say wants and choices. In principle, someone being on the opposite side of saying, should you forget? Have you been arrested for being, a murderer? And have you been in a mass shooting before? So that's one instance where they say, oh, you may forget. Or, in the liberal instance of, who came up with this idea of torturing them? And I'm not the one to slip it out of my mind, but it's just kind of, hesitant language. Well, why would you bring up something like that if you were indeed, not involved? The question there is, why would a public worker make such a thing up? Why would they go to such great lengths to, believe in something that is related to a mass shooting or make some sort of arbitrary complaint? And then you go back into the textbook and say, oh, that's formal interrogation there, but on the level that's unheard, unseen, and not no longer figurative. It's a lie to the courts. You're lying to the courts. Your arbitrary interrogation, even if it was a two-turn style interrogation with two actors, or even the green thumb, which is two agency heads, that would be criminal. Basically, you would be committing a crime right there, and that would have broken not a Fifth Amendment, that would broken multiple codes of conduct within the U.S. government. It might, pertain to the First Amendment and quite a few other amendments, as like something like the welfare militia would be about the operative sake of community awareness or identity, as a comparison towards safety and peacekeeping, as any honorary or any person would subject themselves to under oath, right? Agreeing with the pinnacle system, the obstruction or non-obstruction of law, many things, right? So your policy there would be to uphold the law at all costs, being a U.S. citizen. So there's that. You can't null that. You can't, not check mark that. But the obtained agreement there is to protect the country and the Constitution at all costs. So should people be able to forget? I mean, if they missaid all of that, or if they, indeed interrogated the law enforcement somehow, or evaded the idea and lied to the courts, it would be upside, right? So you're finding a way to lie to someone. Let's say you saw a lawyer, you saw a doctor, you saw a judge lie. It hurts somebody. Would that be wrong or right to lie about? Most people would say it would be right to lie about because they have harmed someone. But somebody within 5 weeks of criminal justice job, they might say no. Second job, they might say yeah, no. Third job, they say no. The fourth job, they say I'll get you later. The fifth job, they'll say I am the law. But the principle there is there's really no tidy answer to that. It's about safekeeping, safe networks that keep you in a facilitation that or realization or efforts or community awareness or law that keeps you safe. So you're quitting yourself on that one. You're the safety net behind your actions. But when you have an emergency contact, you have a friend that burns you, according to law, that's when things get out of hand. They lie. They create some sort of false identity, false subjectiveness. And then when you say false subjectiveness, you honestly right away say bias. You say racism. And I think you're completely correct. Right? Those are two big ones with no big names behind them. Right? Bias and unethic, or what would you call it? A non-operative spirit, or perplexion is a good word, as like a perplexion to not recycle, but do something past tense that is about pretensiveness. And when you say pretensiveness, you mean like opening up a boat and jumping into America the wrong way? I think that's what we mean. And then, obviously the perplex or the bias, meaning, choice and action. Do they go together? Should they be put together? No, they shouldn't. The policy there would again be about saving the United States. You would have some sort of formal consent, I suppose, like even if it was a draft card or your notes or something saying, this is my identity according to law. or else your ideas are obscure, right? You're listening to kids' music. I mean, it's kids. I mean, but the policy of trunking systems, they are not qualified for these ideas. I mean, you're basically turning or tuning a mechanism into something it could be, right? Sitting in the rocks is the same thing, but the sensation of the earth doesn't make something right or wrong, right? According to the law, just because you feel like you want to stand in light doesn't mean you are standing in light. So if you are a mass shooting victim, right, you're standing in the light in a courtroom and you say less and you forget to say, and the courts don't care. But in principle, or you were just obstructive how many mass shootings you had been in for a day and said nothing as you thought it was all taken care of. I mean, I would see most military officers, if they were ever in court and with something they trust and they were young, I believe they would not testify because they believe they, on behalf of the U.S. government, were already formidably, what would it be called? Taken care. They were already not granted immunity, but they were already, the case was undebriefed, and then it was basically closed because it was already looked and taken care of, right, by some sort of commission, you would think, or committee for maybe the Senate or something else. But the facts aren't always true. The general won't always do that if it was ever a thing, if it was ever a movie. I don't know. But will the courts make you forget about it? They might say, oh, that's actually private data and you're not allowed to do it because you just spoke up that day didn't mean anything, even though to me it did something that it was supposed to not do, which is go further in the law. And some sort of court martial system, would it be different? We would hope. But do you see a lot of advice online about that subject? Probably not. So it's kind of clear that there's some sort of objective there, and you might say, "Hey, isn't that more like military surrounding or control or lack of control of technology?" And you might say, "Yeah, it's more of an experimental side, right?" If you have one-sided judgment, one-sided arguments, those are usually civil courts, and their matters are brought to you by judicial needs. They're not war courts, as I put it or spoken. They would basically be within that frame of mind, which is, again, collateral, right? The military doesn't necessarily use collateral that is business stake, right? Because that would be somewhat insane. I mean, it's been there, it's done that, but it would be tacky in a way to have your information leak. It would be unprivate, right? So it's kind of like a modem business or technology business going out of business, but all of their namesake on all of their equipment being used, right? It's purchasable, it's an option online, but it doesn't create any developmental sense except the ability for it to be used in a backdoor hack or some sort of weird idea. Like the opposite of notes. If you're writing a piece of paper, writing a document, you'd say, this is the discourse between my notes and then my selective reasoning, my support choices. Notes would be kind of like the abbreviation there as time, choice, necessity, and usury, or the note-taking itself. So there we go. So we've been over a lot of the ideas about what it means to be in court for mass shooting, but there's no beginning or end the conversation. You're kind of saying this is really daunting for me to understand and kind of collect upon. I am whoever, I am doing whatever I need to. I do all the things I need to do of myself, and for whatever reason, I keep on blanking out, keep on going, and this stops making sense. I get these big, unsettling arguments, and it just doesn't make sense to me. So, that's what this video is for, just to try to document, what is hope, what is heart, what is less harm. So, we'll go into the next questions here, as I've done a few times before, and go into the privilege of looking at these conduits. Right? So let me share my screen here. Hopefully I don't give anything away. Maybe that'll work. Yeah, okay, that's good. Will I do that? No, don't do that. Okay. I hope I do that. No, it doesn't really do that. Okay. So I'll get it on this spreadsheet, guys. I'm not a spreadsheet. I'm sorry. Another text pad. Google Notes are pretty awful sometimes, so I'll have to do it that way. Okay, so here we go. I will put it on this note here, called titled, and then we'll see if I can share the screen here. Dun, 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 dun. Here we go. All right, so here is the unambiguous list of choice here. So basically, these are the quartile, the quartile, or quartile. I forget how they said it. Um, I've heard that one before, right? So um, we went over should the courts be able to make people forget about mass shooting survivors, and again, anything can come up at any time. I mean, you could use a water bottle for a weapon for whatever sakes, tissue paper to write or create an evasive fire. I mean, there's many things you could do to stop somebody at the wrong sake of time. And a hacker or a terrorist network or a bad actor will play their part and try to stop anything. And that's court 101. I mean, that will happen no matter what. But the bigger question is, you being a person would obviously be outspoken about the subject. There is no reason in the eyes of the public you shouldn't be. In many ways, there's no reason you should just get high one day or high and mighty, as they put it, and just run off and say, those are my problems behind me. In a way, but the bigger problem is you shouldn't be selective with the resource. You should always be maintained in your thought system, as it is quite important. And the point would be, hey, you need to solve this issue because it is a reality, right? So as time goes on, your idea becomes more formidable as you are picking up the idea of that, right? And it becomes more necessary to protect yourself and others, obviously. So let's go into more of the timeliness of this conversation. Should the government be able to censor mass shootings or timelines? Yeah, no. I mean, we already see this formidable matter, and I think I've been through the business intelligence section. I've talked to reporters before, and they said, no, timelines are always unsegregated data, but you'll find people who are on charts, top honchos, as they said, they know better, but they absolutely don't know better. And I'm not saying they can't, believe in their own story. They've experienced something before, something was lost. I mean, there's many ways or reasons somebody could believe it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's reluctant data, right? So you're looking at mathematics when you do it. You're tricking yourself into some sort of statement. So when you take choice and voting, you have the ability to kind of make a makeshift or make idea of something that doesn't necessarily go together, right? So if everything was written in a hashtag, would you believe it more? It would be more efficient in your mind. Well, obviously, it'd be more efficient, right? It would be more necessary to kind of qualify as data, right? But if you wrote things in other things like AMPR scripts or things like that, it would be in the nature of programming. There would be stress involved, or bad function between XML or something, and then Word or something. But overall, the policy there is the system itself. You're holding the system accountable, responsible, and then through your etiquette or through your formalized channels, communication, you're finding that the system is intelligent in some way, and you're creating a dependence on that. Right. Same as for dependence on the court, same as a dependence on anything else. But when you in reality look at the numbers I look at, obviously in business intelligence, it can tell you a whole different thing, even without censorship, without censorship itself, but it is insecure, which is secure data. Right. So you being able to not be on a timeline and tell you, hey, you're not on a timeline right now. Same as money policy. There's a lot of things that are not on timelines, a lot of things that are. And that's why we have an accountable economy today in which we can rely on. Right. And it doesn't take a business math major to do it. I mean, jokeful right now. You're looking at two basic policies in mind, and you're looking at the basic ones that are partnered throughout your life cycle, right? That's being a child, and that's being formidably, appropriately being able to attest or acclaim to that market, which is looking at the strategic market in front of you as an option shopper for the other optional shoppers, right? Or for the optional, on-demand shoppers, right? So you were finding a way to be there for someone else as a third party or a second party. And those are the big trends in mind, not the ways of third party, because when it goes down to wanting to remove content online, removing that is expensive, it's unrelatable to a human being because it's not a thing. If you had the choice to leave static electricity alone, or getting shocked, or visiting a nuclear plant site or nuclear radiation, of course you're going to leave because it's going to poison and make you sick. But the reality there is, censorship and time limits happen the same way as anything else. They're appropriated through system-wide thinking. It doesn't mean it's a consumer demand. I mean, it's a consumer choice on some level, right? If you ate messy food and went to work at a lab, expect yourself to be unhappy that day, but it doesn't mean that the system is inequality, right? It means that it's creating its own focus, its own, perception. In a way, you're balancing the books because you have nothing to depend on except the choice of a consumer, right? So it's yes and no, but the attainment there is also about public privilege, honesty, ethic, just as we were talking about before, and the reality behind those things. The government should not be able to censor mass shootings or time limits, and you ask yourself, how would you know that? Well, you look at it as spatial data, zeros and ones on a date system, your zero and ones on a system for data, basically. And without looking at that, you look at administrator access, you look at, developers. Do they hold the same or share the same development company? But beyond that, in a simple way, I mean, you might think about it like, day or light. You're solving a proof, you're solving a problem, a algebraic problem with FOIL in the intent. You look at the consumer math etiquette, like, an MA, PG-13 system, PG system, G system. How does it apply to you, and what is reflection there? Or, of course, you can look at the opposite ground. What does the statement begin with? What does it, shield you from? What does it think for you about, right? Just like words would be. But in the system, equality, you always look at the data, the mapping. Why is there equality in math equations? Why is there inequalities? Why is there a function that is depreciated, right? So I mean, for an honest government, you would look at short-term markets, long-term markets, and there's not really a thing beyond that. But you're looking at the principle of accommodate language and conversation. And the how, our thoughts, use, nice, minute. I mean, there's a lot of things you're calling it eyes, and then what in business and journalism we call your whys, your Y, like the letter Y, whys and eyes. It means like you're ricked, or you're rolling under your desk in case of a bomb invasion, or you're calling the telephone on what they consider a paid system, right? So you're creating a way to roll backwards and stay safe, right? So that system there is functionable, but like anything, you keep it clean. That's the number one thing as well. You keep things clean, and they create not bounty. That'll create plentiness for you. It's not like the Renaissance. In the Renaissance, we live in a place. You get the equality right. You look at the baggage in a way. If it's the square root of something, you look at the square root, the need, the weight, the function of the system. Not always on paper, not always on this, but in the real sense of engineering, if you aren't there, there's a problem, right? So if you have a question that has never been asked before, ask it. That's the biggest way. That's the biggest way to change something on your hands, or find a way to do it, right? So that's the most honest way to do it. So those are kind of like things you would account for as well. So let's go on to the next question. The last one is about many things. C-SPAN, Channel C. I mean, going back into the experimental thought again, right? The experimental thought is about voting. Big VOTE. You are voting your way into success, into choice, into not frustration. You're voting a way to do something. If it doesn't work now, find a way to do it and do it. Okay, so the next question here: should a mass shooting victim be able to cuss without being censored? Beep. Yeah, but would the question be about brainwashing someone? Would it be about this sort of thinking? Would it be about intelligence grabs? Would it be about something that is unsupportive? But the reality there, you'd have to look at the codes and how they were created. I mean, PG-13, rated R, MA. Would it add a grammatical effort if it was already no effort at all? What stylized grammar is not a documentary. It is news. And then according to AP News, which is corrupt. And then there is, something beyond that, PG and beyond, as I put it, which is grammatical and effective. But it's not effective; it's a system effective, right? So you're finding a plot, not a point, but a not coalition. It's a plot, and then it's like a TD system. I forget. It's like a corn over. So it'd be kind of like volume would be, as though like business would be. If you have volume, you have success. If you have, a point in time, or as what they would say in history, plotting or dating, you have a human. So beyond that, it's significant. Finite positivity. I guess it's a choice, right? Choice doesn't matter. It's not bug spray, but it's something deep down there in that system. And it might say, it's the guiding light, right? The guiding light, I guess. So we'll go to the next question. That was a little bit much, but I mean, if you were a Sailor or Popeyes and you were a rated R movie and you cussed and you were in a mass shooting, you're straight out there. So I mean, the next level there is the bomb, le bomb, like in ignatic thinking, or the thinking about cryptography. You're thinking about the bomb, the A to the C, or the C to the A. It's just a mix up, and in principle, modern technology doesn't cover those things. And as well as civilians do not have that right or realization to effort. So I mean, if you ever need question the question of mass shootings or timelines, you look at the AC abbreviation for cybersecurity, and that would be the class act, or a class actor, or actor, bad actor, threat actor, whatever it is. Those are the things: 90th percentile and 70th percentile of the market or range, right? So that principle tells you, one, a victim; two, you have B market; three, you have a C channel grounding; four, you have you have some sort of skip. You have the whole system, but it's false or skipped. False negative, maybe. There's a lot of things nowadays. Modern technology, and this idea is very outdated. So it does tell you a thing, but it still sticks to the economy as though it is effective, right? It's like, in banking, if you go and count 1, 2, 3, 4, that's all you need to know, as though you had a bad transaction. You were basically telling yourself there has been bank robbery. There's some sort of interruption in the system that needs to stop, and it's because it's blanketed, right? So you have no cover at all for these transcendence, right? But if you're looking at it through an exponential need, and you're looking at it through marketing, or maybe not marketing, but security protection, you're looking at CV, cover and resume. So cover and fence. So let's go to the next question here. And if ever you're in a fight with somebody, in a street, not a street fight, but you're talking about on the plot, on the car for car, this person chasing you down, they're trying to kill people. You make sure you're safe, right? But the call signal is going like you'll get it right eventually, but it goes like you don't do it like that. It's a call sign, a military call sign. If in the event of an attack, you were to kill your opponent, basically, in these instances of being within a mass shooting, and then a killer coming after you in a defensive driving tactic, kind of like the FBI would do in their defensive driving tactics, but on the streets, this person is hunting victims down. As a humorous joke, right? So let's go to the next of questions, right? Let me test you right here. Who owns the most? It wasn't. It was this one. Who owns the most assets in a mass shooting? What the hell does that even mean? It probably means if assets. Let's look up the equation here. It is called the asset test ratio. So the asset test ratio, and I'll just look it up just for the portion, is asset test ratio equals cash. Let's see if I can copy it. Oh, no. Let's see if I can, create a devious note here. Okay, so the acid test ratio. Let me put it under these two here. Acid test ratio equals cash plus. Let me put the parentheses, just kind of like we were saying, foil. Cash plus marketable securities plus accounts receivable parentheses divided by n. Yes, obviously everyone has I'm just typing here. Current liabilities. So, and so basically, by the numbers above 1.0, a company is in good financial health and can easily pay off its immediate debts. The company might struggle to pay its short-term bills without selling inventory first, below 1.0, and then too high, a very high ratio, like well over 2.0, can mean the business is leaving cash idle instead of growing the company. So we are looking at the financial statement as though it is like a mesh shooting. Why? Probably because of the choice in action. It's Novus. And one thing we do know is there is only a sliding rule. So if you can't get it right, you slid off the earth, right? Well, no. Well, actually, yes. So if you are caught up in something and you can never finish your thing, you're still liable. Yeah. So if you take out food stamps or EBT, are you liable? I don't know. Food stamps, I don't know that one. We could look it up. But I mean, Social Security, yes, you are liable for this. Warfare programs, are you liable? You are viable for those things as well. So you look at the acid test equation 1.0, low is financially, well, what is it again? Let me copy and paste this real quick. Right here, these are perfect to look at. It's a quick way for a business person to kind of look at the financial health and stratification of a business, or finding the edge for the business. You're looking at many things because the debt ratio there is also only built on product and market. And let me raise my hand, and then the people. So why is this so difficult if it's built on that? Because it's basically built on people and market, or people and goods. So we don't speak too much good math nowadays still. And there's not too many tests to do many things. So we go by this in the business world called the acid test ratio. And it might be kind of new to you or something, but this is how even some people would do certification. Maybe in the military, or maybe in the business world, or maybe in consumer finance. But in the medical world, it might be a little bit different. But the tests there are not based on probability. Right? These are based on statistical gains, needs, and then thinking skills that are complying with these math strategies, but not all of them. So how would it apply? Let's say we go to the next question: who owns the most liability in mass shooting? And then we have who owns the most assets in the mass shooting. So we have cash plus marketable securities plus accounts receivable and current liabilities. That pretty much fits, not really much, but it fits the up to question of, how do you get from a kid life to being a mass shooter? How do you get from an adult to being a mass shooter? Probably because there's some sort of significant loss. Or is it because they have the ability to buy miniguns and shoot many people? Well, maybe not. Maybe not so much. Right. So the principle there, the acid test equation, I mean, it doesn't even mean much, but it does say it's soluble, force of the business and non-soluble. And that's, again, the language. If you're quitting a business today and closing it down, you are disintegrating that business. So, thanks. That's what the name is. That's what it will show up as on the paper. So, above 1.0, I mean, this isn't really numbers, but it shows you a finite test for checking a true market and non-true market. So, you have cash, somebody with a meshing, equitably might have low cash because they have bad ideas, and they say rich people always have good ideas, or they have much more market strategy, which is pretty much true. Pretty much. Unless you're really formally really sad and you formally have a business that has a lot of bad things. But, again, if you had a lot of money, probably you could break free from that and it'd probably be fine. So that's a big question there. Or, I mean, you go back to the question of, can the courts censor something related to a mass shooting or something like that? I mean, I'd be pretty sad, I guess. I'd probably, if that happened and they start censoring many, many mass shootings, I'd probably say, hey, that sounds like a bad guy there. My personal story says, I'm not giving him no flowers this year, or her these flowers this year, but surely you need to be taken down from your dictatorial government. You are the true bad person, as an adult would put it, right? So we go into marketable securities. What would they have for marketable securities? Their own attained business? There's a lot in the market. You're a security guard. You're looking for a 4-hour job. You're looking for a 5-hour job. You're looking for even a part-time job. You're looking for clothes. I mean, anything you do, marketable securities are usually negative. You have no obtained usage between priority and then in a priority without being in business, without being the select group within the reason. There's many things. And then the one thing is the marketable securities are not accountable. And then you're splitting your time between accounts receivable and this priority, says bank robbery even works this way. And the security says, there was a bank robbery the other day in my house, or, something else, or, they keep on using equivocal cash strategies or equivocal cash strategies and, putting it down. This money keeps saying just many things, and I can't handle it anymore. But, again, who am I? So marketable securities is a big thing, right? Because it is, an advantage. So, I mean, you're advancing something like debt or non-debt. So, I mean, as a loan, shark, you might say, hey, I have enough marketable strategies to put into the funds for a loan, or their strategies to put out, right? So you have 1.5 or something on good day, and you make 5 on the other day, and you're like, yeah, I'll give away 4. I'll keep it in my marketable securities. And that's one exchange, even though the plenty, or the idea is mix data. You'll mix data no matter what. So you're segregating ones. And you might say, hey, it ends in 1, and it might be a good, even though there's some zeros in there and it's saying something else, but it's above and then too high. So, the point there is, yeah, but the point is also you're creating a question followed by an answer at the exact time, right? So if your emotional or your faction or your structure of your monetary policy or consumption is the same as the answer that you're receiving, does that make sense? Yeah, it does make sense on a what we consider a sum level. The government works on a sum level because they print money. It doesn't mean it's bad. It means that when you're on a sub level, you're sharing information. It doesn't mean it's unconstitutable, right? Some word. It means that it's slash prices. It's capital. What we consider capital. Approximation. You're capitalizing on a unit, a market, and a trust. A unit, though, might be considered against the law in many countries. It's because it creates power and control, it creates unethical thinking, or it creates strategy that is basically you're saying, this is when you can sign, this is when you cannot sign, but it's based on the principle there of being less than equivocal, fair share, right? So, I mean, someone might say that's, you're lying right now. I mean, I can't have that. I can't buy that for that reason. Some people would say, that fair share is cleared for a reason. It's experimental or some other thing, but I won't really get into it because it's experimental, and you would have to have a whole business doing that, and clearly it would be an unsafe one. So that would be a crazy day. So accounts receivable for a mass shooter. I mean, you might have PayPal. You might have something else. You might have something else like questionable. Like let's make a joke program. Any time somebody cusses the word. You're a liar and you just made up a lie, you're going to pay $5. It's nonsense, basically. Right. So the accounts, let's see if I can find an acid test ratio that is more formidable. So there's give another option of the equation. Oh, actually, give another option of this equation for a person. So the acid test equation would work cash checking or personal liquidity ratio. And you might be able to grab a few of these liquid tensions and look at the cash ratio aspect. But again, we live in the United States, and again, personal liability or liquidity wouldn't exactly say much because you have the structure and strength of a weapon. You have many things to do that. You're a contractor. So personal liquidity ratio, cash plus checking, over savings accounts, monthly essential living expenses, and you're not really going to find much. It says it all. I mean, if you're good, and you're bad, right? Might help you learn something, but the cash ratio for market structures, which is looking at your lean, looking at your system, and looking at your money, right? So you're looking at fundamental needs that you're trying to save up for, and then your money that you're creating, basically your support, long run, maybe capital, exchange any money you have to exchange, any money that is formidable. And that's a tough one again there, because that's where it will fit into the bigger system, which you have the capital part. You're basically right about to rob that bank, but you don't, and you go on that other thing instead. So, and then you divide that by current liabilities, which is like frequency output, wants and needs. So, I mean, you want a getaway car, you want this or that. Oh, you want more weapons, you want more drugs. Maybe if it's drugs, you want more estimation. And I mean, the mass shooter might just put the drugs into the equation, as that's a way to censor the environment, censor or sanitize it, right? Because the drugs are the hard part. The soft part is about making the money, cash. Marketable securities is the hard part as well, because it's managing cash, and you need like something like a 501, 500K. You got it. The big companies, and then you want the accounts receivable, because it's routine, right? It's routine, it's makeshift, and it's business right there. Negative business numbers right there. So you got the asset test equation, and you can put let's say they have $500 cash. They have marketable securities at $499, so that makes it $999. And then you want accounts receivable. Let's say it's -10. All right, so let's put this into a calculator. 500 plus 499, and then I'm the one putting the C in this button here. So plus, or I'm sorry, minus -10. And you're like, you remind me of an actor. Probably because I taught that actor to talk through the screen. So, so that would be 989. Then let's say their liabilities, current liabilities are, I mean, in a moderate economy that I can just buy a weapon and go crazy with, $200, $300, $500 would all be taking, I think. Or basically, I mean, if you're looking at transcendently, I mean, maybe 1,000, but the probability there is. Have you ever seen that kind of capital? Maybe if they had a job and they've tripped out, so maybe like within 2 or 3 months, or 20 to 30% of the job workforce. So let's go like 10% of, I mean, a whole year economy. It's like 15. 23,000 more closer to 10% dividend, because it would be like equal to the output or sort of data they have. So it's like 23, 230. No, 23,000. Let's see. I'm a little tired right now. 23,000 times 10% is 2,300. I mean, that's enough to buy weapons, buy an assault rifle. But I mean, assault rifles can go for 400, 700, but they may go up higher. Just a regular handgun, $200 to get the right shells. It'd probably be $300, $500 to get the right shells. They'd have to be imported or something. But I mean, if you're going for one gauge solid gun, $500 even, maybe a little bit more, $589 with tax. And then you go with select region. You got like $1,300 for whole gear. You got a bulletproof vest. That'd be like $400, $300, maybe $200 either. And then you go for 1.5 KDG. So that's like a gauge, you got a socket, or like 4 guns lying around. So I mean, 2,300 easy. What would you be able to get in debt? 5,000? Probably not. You wouldn't be able to get a loan for that. 1,000, not with this sort of balance as what they would have. 1/5 of the probability of 2,300. times 2%, maybe. Something that's $46 in their pocket. I mean, you could rob an armored car pretty easily. If you had this much output and you wanted to go, I mean, most likely had the money. You give them a 5 to 200% on that, maybe. We'll max out 200%. That's what a bad guy would do. Has no idea, sets the guy up. He's in a business and he doesn't know. That's $92 still. So, I mean, they've straightened away that. It wouldn't go 500% as a max sell strength of the business, but they probably may like say, hey, hey, we want that, but we don't want it like this or like that. I don't know. I mean, maybe as a max loan, they've been working for 9 years, maybe. Maybe the strategy is good. Maybe not wired awake anymore because of the mass shootings. I can believe it. With these like asset ratio and connections, if you're working, you have ultimate freedom, and then you can jump off anytime you want. So let's go like high. Let's go like 8,280 on that. So we'll all right, 989 divided by 9,280 or something like that. So let's check it out. Obviously we already know. So the short term is 0.10 DEC, DEC. So what I see is it's below 1.0. The fiscal responsibility would there be accepted. They would already be accepted in the system. They would already have a free point to get through one way, one vantage point, and then be what they considered degradative, right? So it's a strategy murderers use. So let's look at the other one, 989, and they only have a cash balance of 500. So figuratively, it would be positive. They'd be in a positive mindset. They have $500 strategy. Keep your fingers crossed. It's 1.9, so it's above. So might be considered too high as well. It's real close. It's basically rounded up to that 2.0. The company is in good financial health and can easily pay off its immediate debts. $500 cash or a personal bond, BOD. Not in that economy. The bond would not be soluble because they'd have way too many people who are on bond. There's too many prisoners today. Too many people in jail. Has my bond ever even been cleared? Can't even find my bond for that one day ever. So I don't think so. But too high, a very high ratio, like well over 2.0, could mean the business is leaving cash idle instead of growing the company. So could he be doing up to something else? And that's, I think, one of the biggest questions. Could you be up to something else when you're doing such a shitty thing? I would say after watching this many things, but being stupid, but people being there, I'd say, yeah, I think they have a lot of things they've been up to, unless it's like straight up, like, bad, mad, sad. I'm someone, and then going straight up, and then they're going capping people or killing them. Kind of, I would think, but I mean, I'm kind of here to listen at all times, so I kind of don't know. I don't think it's a joke or anything, but it's real. If I was ever in that situation, I would say, hey, look at me. I put my way in front of it. Not always the best idea. Why? Maybe liability itself. Maybe that's the biggest question, I would think. But, again, the liability is what reason that someone would die. I don't really buy it. But, the policy, the politeness, the quality of concern, I mean, those are all liabilities technically, but, as well as, accounts receivable. So that means transcendental in a way, like unless the focus was about the can-do attitude someone could have and then it being resorted as a well done attitude or something, some weird thing. Figuratively, a cash market advantage always works that way. It's a fair share, fair stake. And then an asset ratio, as though it was a lean math system, would be though like the FBI is most wanted for catching art thieves, or the equation, maybe you could find it, as they would didn't even mix this with art. I hate when you know acronyms and don't know them, right? Acronyms. You have to type it out. Make to order. That's the word. I think it's RMTO. Make to order. Yeah, I think that sounds about right. Like somebody has used the word or remainder to challenge the system. Kind of seems like a modern thing. I almost don't want to believe it. Let me try typing the real one out. Typed it out. Sometimes I'm just absolutely correct about everything. Resource Management Transformation Office, yes, FEMA. There's actually a clue right there. And realistic muffin tin orbital. I was thinking about this the other day as the realistic muffin tin orbital. Was I thinking about that one? There was another tin orbital, but this one is an advanced quantum mechanical model used to calculate the electronic structure of solids by dissolving the Dirac, solving the Dirac equation for heavy elements and magnetic materials with strong spin orbital coupling. I don't know about that one, but maybe the one we were talking about, which is make to order, but DNA, RBTO. I mean, they're all subatomic. I mean, if you're looking at a square root, adding two square roots together, very simple, very weight structure, very number structure. So, what kind of number structure would you be looking at as a mesh? Comparing, alcohol to, soda almost. I mean, you got to think of it like it's like a 2 liter cap. It fits about anything you fit into a alcohol bottle. It fits in hydrogen peroxide. It fits in a lot. It's in a soda bottle, but the principle there is kind of like you're well over this idea of making DIYs and then making the strategy. I have to write these things down sometimes, which I do. That's annoying. DIYs and then the idea behind something else like not DIY homemade, kind of like do it yourself. Opposite, right? Quick fix, right? So kind of like a school would be almost like slang for slang, right? Or slang to slang. I don't know. It's a really good question. So there you have it. I mean, there's a core. Let's look up the word because the computer can't really understand me. Quartile. Quartile and statistics. Quartiles are a type of quantiles. I'm not sure if I said that. In statistics, quartiles are a type of quantiles which divide the number of data points into 4 parts of quarters of more or less equal size. The data should be ordered from largest to smallest to largest to compute quartiles. As such, quartiles are a form of order statistics. The 3 quartiles resulting in 4 data divisions are as follows: Q1, 25th percentile. Q2, median data set, they're 50%. Third quartile, Q3 is the 75th percentile, where the lowest 75% data lows. Below this point, it is also known as the upper quartile. So, I mean, in a fixed data set that uses quantitative statistics, does it apply? QM2. I don't think it really does, but at the same time, your skin. I mean, a lot of the things use quartile systems, like your skincare uses it, pressure systems use it. The green colors, when oxide and quartiles are a way to measure oxygen rates, things like that. So I don't know. I mean, it's a good question as though measures have a system, but it's not a true basis. A true basis would meter oxygen or gas levels or air levels in a certain way. A quartile system or quantitative statistics system will not. It will certainly never do that, and it never will do that. The approach is completely incorrect. It's like eating 2 forks out of a long container. I mean, there's nonsense involved with computing 2 things at once because they're not made that way, right? Just because you say an element can do one thing doesn't mean it does it, right? Doesn't mean a gun and an assault rifle can do one thing doesn't mean it does or should do it, right? So you need to use words that are proper, like if you're using a word that's like light bulb doesn't light up, it gives light, or it says slave is not doing the work, or a slave could do it. No. So you'd say a person is doing work, a person is being paid for work, right? So, the probability is not easy, but the chain reaction is hard. It's a little harder. So it shows that there's some sort of radical mass, right? So if it's E, Euler's number, and you have a radical number like pi, it shows it stands for something and it has radical, qualities to it, and that it is, also true, right? So it shows that it's true. It's basic. It's true, and it's connected, right? So, I guess so. That's one good question. Why? Because that's what kids memorize nowadays. And that's what they believe in, positive and negatives. How do I use the positive and negative button without the EE? Kid, you have the working calculator that says log 10, log 20, log 30, log 40, right? These things are for gimmicks. They're for basically system domains. So percentage is or blocks, right? The term one. So let's go to the next question here, which means they're marketable turning points, right? They're turning points of strategy or ratios of strategy, right? Right. Like counting light, ligands. All right, so the next question here. Why is there not initial investment in collateral reasoning and mass shooting or preparedness? Did we answer the question? No? Okay. Probably because it's too big. No, probably because it's too small. Probably because it's single-minded and it has no number at all. No number at all. There's the answer. We have no number at all. We have a number that is solid, like the number 1, and then we have a matrix that equals out to 2.0, or the executive function that equals out to 2.0. Why? Is there sound? There's no sound in the world because there's no orchestration of support for quality of video. I don't know. Why is the quality of what they consider the mass shooting not allowed to be invested in? Why is there not internships for the same program that offers mass shooting advice? Is it because they don't have the money or they don't have the collateral to do a program like that? I mean, you're basically signing a piece of paper in hours, right? Bad stuff. So what's the question about? First of all, we're talking about any mass shooting. We're not talking about kids anymore. We're talking about anyone. Is it a liability upon something that doesn't exist? So you're looking at the map of things, right? So let's take it to FBI and then their work with the NC National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Yes, that's the one. Is it a realized organization and agency? Has it always been? Let's look at the history of NC and EC. So the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, according to the search, NCMEC, was founded in 1984 by John and Reve Walsh following the abduction and murder of their son, Adam Walsh. And if you're unaware who that is, that's a TV host who does Keystones, or he looks for missing people all the time on the TV. It operates as a private, non-profit organization serving as the United States National Clearinghouse for Missing and Exploited Children. So there's your answer. We don't have a formidable actual place. It is kind of like Crime Stoppers would be. But for kids, for other agencies to go in and play. And they might have work ethic that goes in there, but it is not, again, a true agency. They do not share all the same confidential information with them as though they were law enforcement. So, gosh, there's one. But what about the adult people and the FBI and your parents doing their thing and they're just regular people? Kids are under the umbrella of the FBI and they do their thing as well and they do the same exact thing. Okay. How do you intern for the FBI if we asked 4 out of 5 questions that were all positive, and they actually had significantly less negatives, meaning that the relationship there is owed versus non-owed? Let's go back to the thing again. It says above 1.0, the company has a good financial standard. All the options about mass shootings being real. Above, good standing, right? Below 1.0, the company might struggle to pay short-term bills, selling inventory first, as those are transaction and money taking place, as we've already talked to the government about, certain things like money and, options to talk to them a little bit. And then too high, it's well over. Transcendently, the government say you owe money. You might say it that way. Or they might say, hey, maybe not for that exact scenario, situation. You might say, hey, you owe money, but it's well over, or they owe money, the business owes money, or we owe you money through debt. You didn't sue. We sued you. Big figure, big five, double it. So I mean, kind of the principle says, hey, look at it a different way, but find a different feeling to do it, or a different way to do it altogether. Kind of like the way we work as human beings, like saying, like, that person got shot to death but came back to life, and they didn't really make much money, but they compiled all that information and said, hey, the government said, hey, we owe you a bunch of money now, and you did the wrong thing, you got shot. And the kid, don't worry about it. That's life. And then, the caseworker saying, hey, that's life. And saying, like, hey, or like you're in a different place in the world saying, like, hey, that's life. Get the hell out of here. Yeah. I mean, is one equal to the other? Like, does the kid, like, with, like, brain trauma win the other kid, or the other kid win the other kid? I mean, if we're talking about resources and counting all the resources in the world, then, hey, maybe that's a simpler way to put it, but, not on this time, not on this stream, not on this live, right? Maybe if you're, like, working in the cybersecurity industry and you see a big, sour, bad word, like, I don't want to use that word. I don't want to work with it. I work with the top on honcho. Like, who do I trust? And you're kind of like, jittering. And you're like, there's your story, right? So, yeah. So let's go to the next question. As though I think we've broken some sort of ground there. Marketability or debt relationship is a huge option there. Not just marketability of the business of collaterally being a spy, or a business about spies, which doesn't really make too much sense, and we found something else there. There's a better way to count this kind of test for spies, and then for debt itself, for the government, for the loss of not just time, but the loss of the facilitation, right? So unless it's not debt and facilitation, we've worked with cornerstones, your liabilities as well. So why is there not an initial investment in collateral or reasoning in a mass shooting or preparedness? That's the one we just talked about. Why is there no one outspoken about mass shootings? So there we go about the debt thing. I think formidably, when you ask most people and their cornerstone of, like, divertive thinking skills of why they didn't succeed in life, why they did something, they might say, like, yeah, it didn't make me happy. Empathy like that didn't make me happy. The structure of life would have made me happy doing this instead. They might say as well. They might say, hey, I never went to college and everything was very, very expensive. Or they might say, hey, I didn't have enough money, or, they're not paying me money. They might say, hey, a lot of the time in the military, you'll find a lot of folk, the police will say, hey, or any famous person will say, hey, why is there no one outspoken mass shootings? Why don't you pay me money for my public speaking? And when you say true, I mean true, dude. I mean, they mean, like, they will not speak to you unless you give them money. And I'm not being the one that's going to be, like, pointing people out and say, hey, that guy didn't get his money. That guy, like, lied. That guy didn't really create what he did, or that didn't invent or write what he said. It doesn't really matter, right? The now is the now. And, people who have their mindset on something that is relatable to mass shootings, to ideas about killing people and surviving. And I want you to say it out loud with me, that is a bad idea, to pay people money to let them do certain things, right? And I'm not saying, you can't express yourself. You should 100% be able to express yourself no matter what. Right. But what I'm saying is the principle of the situation, knowing what you know, and what you've seen as maybe a young adult, or person for the first time. Not all adults think that way, right? I don't say, hey, right off the bat, this does seem like a good movie. I mean, it's a cultural revelation. There's nothing wrong with cultural revelations or empathy, right? That is the cornerstone of historical impact or thinking skills. That is Q1 to that, right? But when you're looking at cultural impact and social, I mean, some people, and when you look back in the history books, it will never be there, because it is a cultural revelation, and there is a serious note there saying you can't partner with that person. Maybe one thing versus the other, but the other things are about cultural sensitivity. I'm one of those people. I'm a neutral person. I've always been a neutral person. I have a family of neutral people, and we will never break free from that. right? So the principle of surrounding myself of people who think greater of other things or other people, like ideas about mass shootings or the war, it's not unlost to us, and I have family members who do it. But the problem there is the cornerstone of you saying bad versus good is a completely different thing. You saying bad person, I mean the wrong thing for somebody else or a good thing to somebody else, but money's money. But the bad person is, again, might be the person who committed espionage in the eyes of the government. And you watch the segment and you don't know the whole story, right? It might be the escalation of the good guy says, I've done this by killing him and shooting him in the head. Doesn't sound like a good guy to me. They're new neutral morality points, right? So they're not, political on a sphere of many things. Sophistication of political science itself, of the unjust mind, of unjust thinking, right? So when you're looking at, why is there no one unspoken? Why is there someone not serene about it? You're looking at the choices of philosophical actors to this day, right? Their stories or their mindset. Their mindset is their hope, their family, what they're seeing, what they're surrounding themselves. When you look at the Dalai Lama, when you look at, not I guess the Christian, when you're looking at Teresa, Mother Teresa, or you're looking at not the Dalai Lama, but the other guys. There's many of them. Martin Luther King. There's many people on the spectrum that don't shout or the talk about the lies or the conversations in the political government. Some of them are very outspoken, but they sometimes never talk about mass shootings because they are avoiding the principle and factor about mass shootings. About the principle and factors that conclude what they're saying about these things, which are elemental violence, and then the ability for no hope. And if you're afraid your brother will be shot and killed, if you're outspoken, of course you're not going to speak about it. But of course, you need to do something about the people in your tribe, your ritual, that are telling they're going to die if they don't speak about it. Right? It doesn't mean you're poor if you're poor of soul and heart. It means you need to think harder. Right. So the principle about killing people or innocent people or civilians, it's a big thing in the outside world that says, hey, just because you believed in one thing versus the other, maybe you should open your mind up and say, all people don't deserve to die from mass shootings. All people don't deserve to die from the quelling or the idea about leaving the idea of mass shootings alone. People are dying all the time, but it doesn't mean necessarily that they are avoidant. They are finding a way to create things, right? It doesn't mean that they are taking soul, if you will, but it is murder. Murder's murder in a way, as we'd say. You might find some people say murder and martyr are not the same thing, but that is what separates you from the hurt. As they said, if you are sitting down on a table right now with your parents and they say, hey, you have an option in life to say, you were going to go with the hurt. And the responsibility of parents is to say you were going to go with the herd, right? You're going to go with the herd because that's the best option for you. And that's how you lose less money. That's how you fit in with people. And that's how you start a conversation, right? It might be, no for certain people, right? They might have less fortune with you, but they say you go with them because you're doing the right thing and you're going to be there for somebody in the right way, right? You're going to listen to what's around you, what you're sensitive to. Well, you're going to find a way to be with the herd for the rest of your life, and you're going to find a situation surrounding that fits you and fits you well, right? They might say you're going to be the one protecting, you're going to be the dog in the situation, but that doesn't mean what it means. It might mean you end up in one of these situations and such. You're a mass shooting victim, and you end up in the situation where you're going to be a watchful person for the rest of your life. That bullet took your friend, and that's going to be the difference between what you believe in and what you see. Right? It's not going to change a lot, but it will change about who you are, what you think about things, who you can trust, what you feel devised thinking for. Right? So, or divisional thinking, if that's what you want to say, blue line, the white line, whatever you want to call it. But the principle there, and I'll tell you right now, the dog in the situation is always going to trust, the plant. They're always going to be the green dog. They're always going to be the one who can make the best situation, stay grounded, and pounce at their opponent once they need to take it down. Eat it up. Or they need to, find food. They'll use their nose and they will get the food. Humans use that sense all the time. It's just your way to unlock that situation in your life. It might go into the following question. It might go to reliability. It might go into something else, but the self-image, the self-reservoir, the idea about your picture, your human spirit, your ritualism, it all goes into that, right? It goes into the principle of what you believe is novus, what you believe is your choice, and what you believe is going to help you in the long run, right? That grounding is human spirit is something you take with you as well. And that green sheep is also tactile in a sense, but that tactile sense is always the touching moment, is always the emotion that follows the intelligence, and always the intelligence that is always separate from the technology, right? That idea is nothing new. It's a partnership, or it's a cornerstone between serenity. When you look at Dharma, when you look at the Hindu religion, these are the oldest speaking words you can speak. You're looking at a whole ritual by itself that will never break free from war. Dynamic of thought, dynamic of college. These are all programs, a part of the central thinking or the habit of a human. So if you look at something like Cogino too, or kind of a French idea of ethics or philosophy, like maybe reading something like a cornerstone book, an existentialist one, or something like Plato. You might find hygiene is one of those things. You might find that your collateral thinking is another, right? True revolutionaries separate themselves. In American democracy, we do not believe in these things, right? They're capitalist, marketable, and strategic environments, but they do not go together. They work like a sandbox does. They work like a think tank does not. They work like the ability to separate one person from the herd, right? So that mentality of the sheep is always roaming. It's always necessity. It's always built on land. It's always built on something that's new, on the dynamic of a dog, right? You're herding something that is careful. And our mindset about fast food, mass eating, it's about finding the principle about finding something called the river, right? You're finding something about finding a way to survive, and then that is their survival means and needs. And then you go back to the relatability of finding safety again. Whether it's mathematics or something else, right? The ability for you to find a necessity, whether it's a trivial matter or choice, constitutionalism, right. These are points that are finding water source, finding clean ability to drive you. But those are historical facts. Mass feedings, mass frenzy, those come up with the adoption of many things. Cattle herding isn't just one of them, but many things that find their way for you. Paying debt off, fast is one of those things. Finding a way to make love and make children, one of those things. Finding a way to invest in economy strong and making a strong impression is one of those things. Finding a way to save space, to do nothing, is not one of those things, but it is also one of those things to be the least or most destructive on Earth, right? But also, saving space goes along with keeping safe, right? So that is not one of those things you make money from because they are liabilities, right? But let's say you're a security guard or you have the mentality to be a security guard. It does not mean you'll make money. It doesn't mean you have the ability to make money above anyone else, right? You were sacrificing your time, hours, your liability, your expense, your rapport for something that you were going to make over and over and over and over again. Just the same as somebody working at the grocery store. You were working over and over and over and over again, but your expense liabilities will never be exponential. So security, yes, but they will always take an earned interest in what you are doing. Your supportive action in that situation is always going to be what's on your mind, right? When you're looking at something else, which is, finding a time to work on the farm, go engineering, go, making metal, you're finding a way to create an expose of that fact. You are learning an interested skill for the interest of people, right? So that's a good question of why there's joy over limits over joy, and the function. But when you go in the third one, the sheepdog all itself, you're looking at the surprise venture of not human capital, well, maybe a human relationship to capital, but time. Right. You were looking at not the policy of looking at a fraction, a function, a mistake. You were looking at time itself. You weren't looking at being clean. You weren't looking at being a normal person. When you're a sheep in this mind as a dog, you are looking at being in the herd, right? You were looking at the mentality of you're not going to wear the clean, nice shirt. It's not going to say Schoolhouse Rock on it. You're not going to be teaching a first grade class. You were in lock up and lock down because you were a sheep in wolf's clothing. You want to escape the sheep's and wolf's clothing metaphor, then you can find something better to do with your time. You can find something better to try with your time. That trial, that error doesn't tell you who you are going to be. It doesn't say, these are the new words and language. You follow the rules. You follow the herd and you form the pack. You tell yourself, you are the sheep's in wolf's clothing. Well, that's one thing. But what if someone really dots their I's and dots their T's and dots their crosses then, right? So none of those go together, right? None of those say, hey, I'm going to give you the choice to break the pack and leave, or you're going to go. You're going with the herd no matter what when you're in lock up and lock down. So you're going to have to say that to yourself one at a time right there. So if you're in a bank, and you're a sheepdog, you're guiding, the money, and the money might be the sheep itself, it doesn't say much to you if you can't count sheep, right? But if you're the dog in the situation, you're not getting along with anybody else, and you say, you got to do what I want to do at all times. You're the wolf. You're the instinct behind what's going on. You're what is making you fear whatever you see. Doesn't mean it's going to be capable thought for you in the future, because you're going to have a bank to go to. You're not going to have sheep to listen to talk to. Is it going to ignore you eventually? And tell you, no, it doesn't matter if you're the one here, if you're outspoken. We're sheep and we're still as fast as you. We know your movements. We know your technology. Right? So it's not about breaking the thought in half. You're looking at what you're looking at, and you're looking at what you're doing, right? You're not a sheep in wolf's clothing that's gay. You're a sheep in wolf's clothing that is made for killing things, right? So when you look at the sheep's in wolf's clothing, you think, you're not going to bloody up the sheep. And, most adults don't go in that conversation, but you're not going to be the sheepdog that eats the sheep. But there's the one necessary, thump in the world that says, hey, you're the sheep's in wolf's clothing, the sheepdog now. You're the one that's out of the pack, and your sheep is covered in blood, right? So there's no odd story to the turn of events in which you could see, but there's the one, gestation. There's the idea of the quote. They say, if you're not in the turning point, you're not in the cell. You're not in the cell because you can't eat sheep, right? And that is the idea of it. Because, in the cornerstone of technology, when you trade so much and you have so much and you listen to so much, all you have is black sheep. So when you only have black sheep, you only have black hair. And when you have black hair, you are invisible in the night, right? If you're a dog, you're a sheep dog at heart. Maybe you're a white dog, maybe you're a black dog by fur. That doesn't mean you have the ability to see things that other people don't. It means you're in a place that you can never escape from. So when you're a sheepdog, or you're a dog, or you're a wolf, or you're a sheep, it doesn't matter where you are. You just get along, right? Because if you're a sheepdog, or you're a dog, or if you're a wolf or a sheep, you're going to die someday, and the same impact is going to happen no matter what, right? The solution there is always about the most immature way. The other immature way, besides that, is gelatin from a sheep, stomach fat, or hair, or for capsules for medicine, obviously, or the airplane toxicity going off. And that's a clue. And then obviously the second day in which, the sheep go, they leave the gates, they jump over the gate that's not monitored, and they get out of here, right? It's a trick question, right? Because without the three, you don't have anything, right? So the ability there is, an unanswered solution, an unanswered question to an unanswered mindset that can't exist. Why? Well, I don't know why. So when you go into the next questions here's the next questions, right? So why are there cover-ups related to mass shootings? Why? I don't know. If there's a cover-up to a mass shooting, why would you believe in any cover-up at all? Why would you believe in destroying something? Why would you believe in cover-ups? Is it missing information that's high up there? Is it just too much that no one will listen, and it becomes critical information, and therefore becomes panicky? People drink coffee, people smoke cigarettes, and they say, oh, no, don't talk about this. Or they say, oh, no, you're going to get rid of this. Or, oh, no, don't listen to him. Or, oh, no, let's talk about it now. And you're kind of like, oh, no, this to myself, I'll sit, listen, and silent patiently. I don't know. I mean, if that's the principle you would believe in, or cuff them now, off. You probably think, yeah, officer, I don't want that man arrested because there's going to be more information, or oh no, no, or you say like something quite unipetus. That doesn't even make sense. I don't know what you're talking about. It's like a culture shock that meets no culture shock at all. That makes no sense, right? So, in principle, were all these terrorist attacks, happening beforehand? Not really. A little bit. I mean, there's the Oklahoma bombing. There's all these other things we think. There's the Monday shooter. I mean, there's plenty of people, really. But are they really there in your mind to be there? There's a guy who got shot, Reagan. He looked almost famous for a second. But is it really new? Is it normal? Does it say things that are real and normal? I don't know. Maybe just not. So I mean, it is what it is. Cover-ups. Why are the cover-ups though? And the news media says one thing. Let's say you're in some sort of other military influenza, or you're another military, or United States citizen, and you're recklessly shooting people, and you become powerful, and then you start censoring shootings. What about that? You slaughter 30,000 people and children in a day. Maybe that. Or you keep on slaughtering the children. You keep on, oh fuck them, kill them, fuck, kill them. Maybe that, or maybe this suffice situation of like, oh, we didn't allow the DNA to pass the DNA control test to pass the border, or we didn't let the food in the border. We shut them all down. We shut the grid down. I mean, start. Oh, we shut clothing down. Or like, oh, we shut the timeline down, or oh no, we're pretty sure we're right. They're wrong. I mean, maybe. I mean, I wasn't there. I see these reliabilities of kind of like stories, ideas, thinking skills. But yeah, yet again, we don't really do that. Or you're kind of like we don't talk about the other story. Kind of like a gibberish person. Like we don't really do much, but like I'm in control. I'm the top. Like that guy's been paying my rent, and I'm not gonna let you know that information that's really important now. Oh, and it's critical as well. We don't really do that here. So, I mean, mass cover-ups, money. I'll go back to the equation there. I mean, money plus market. I mean, does that make you a mass shooter? If you're, the government believes you and you're a mass shooter? I don't know. Should the other military be in control of the other military, or in control of our military? I don't know. Cash plus marketable securities, rent. Let's see, cash plus rent. Already paid. Obviously, that's the kind of world we live in. Accounts receivable, plus like any divvy money like you can get, within the time frame of what they consider social work, where it's money. We'll put it like 100, or like money that is 1,200. So cash like 500 plus marketable securities, so like $300 there. This would be plausible, friend. So 500, 800 accounts receivable. So 2,000, the current liabilities, let's say subtracted from 1,200 again. Oh, actually not 1,200, because that's what a MDR economics would be. So let's say 12. Let's see, 500. It's about 2,000. 2,000 divided by maybe 800 current liabilities. About 800. I mean, that would be over credit, over limit, and then over 1 day's of settlement. I mean, you would settle within $50 range, $60 range. That's normal for a abnormal market like eBay or something like that. At 2.5, so too high. Just too high. No, I'm just joking. A very high ratio, like well over 2.0, can mean the business is leaving cash idle instead of growing the company. Yeah, what does that mean, though? They're lying on the statement there. They're in the military. I don't know. Military people can have Section 8. They just can't go to school, right? So, I mean, the whole liability there is, kind of being sad or frustrated. frustrated you there by like teaching you a lesson or you're teaching you something. So I don't know. So let's go to the next question here. Let's see. Why is time or collateral pressing during a mass shooting? I think we kind of went over that. Collateral is irrevocable, as it's not counted. It's kind of like a way to press out of a situation, which is silent. Like you're the silent party pressing out of the situation. Um, and then you kind of like go through the loop, and that's a big question. Like, why can't if someone's silent and then there's a silent party in the situation, it's that Crime Stoppers, the collateral be a version of events? That's a big question. Or time itself. Why can like I mean we're talking about DIY, quick fix. I mean, like if there was no time at all and it's rehabilitation or a school system, I think that's a good way of putting it. Why is the sensation or desynthesization of this time? I mean, that's a very good question. I mean, are some people rested that need to be not covered up? I mean, I don't know. Is it relatable to mass shootings in general? I mean, all crimes. We're just talking about mass shootings now. How about, and because it fits the depiction of something that would meet, high up or higher criteria? I believe it. Why is time or collateral not present in these situations? Well, I mean, we went over a little bit of it. Informants as well as witnesses, witness advocates, cooperating witnesses is one of them. But the pressing matter there's also it's limited. So you have a limited justice, and the other side you also see the QT is less limited, and that's a big focus there. As you can see, there's an exponential growth, exponential factor, and then a relationship between data points. So that's a big deal. So if it's unlimited at a quartile that is bigger than, and then the lower, which is also lower. So if we look at the asset test equation, we have somebody's good financial health and can easily pay off its debt limit. So I mean, there's an invisible thing there. So that's above, but below, somebody might struggle to pay off their unlimited. That's a question. I mean, you QMT, and then something very high, which would create assets that are growth. I mean, you would technically be very high on the quartile and being charted, but there's no way to be just charted even according to the quartile mask. So, here's the question: is the quartile or the Z table fixed? I mean, according to these justice notes, I mean, it says it's fixed. So there we have another answer, as though it is built on maybe something QMT. So I mean, you look at real estate market, and you would say yes. In business intelligence, real estate is the most embezzled, doctored conversation you're going to have. LMT. So you have an exponential EXP that is fixed in their what they consider trilogy or whatever statement they have, statement bonds or outflows. It's federal. Basically, it's federal, its jurisdiction is federal, but it fits the criteria of also the needs of a system that is low in cash, connects with that idea at least, but then it's infinite. So we have a low level crime, syndicate or, a way to launder money. But if we listen, every laundering outfit always has a legal aspect to it, which is not just legal, but is an ethical concern or dilemma because it is not legal itself. So the challenge there is, possibly time, possibly quartile, but you're always fixing the arrangement, always finding a quartile or two, look at the math, right? So if you're looking for one or two quick fixes, DIYs, you're looking at, again, the very situation, which is innocence or remittance of DNA. I mean, it might be the security of the remittance of some sort of idea, maybe not DNA, but the idea about the fixed economy. And would you relate that to be a shortage of labor? Would you relate it to be something else fixed, right? And if you have the green light on something or the light on something, it means you're in a system that might be wacky or not ordinary, right? You're working with an economy that is not helpful, right? You're working with an economy that's not going accordingly. which is yes and no, but true, but also shows a quartile range that is the IOUs. So Fixer also has a questionability to pause and stop. Can something like a Z table have or relate to a quantity that is playable and stoppable? I mean, yes, statistically, yes, but within a channel, no. The channel has been proven to be false, right? But at the same time, does that mean it could be a Z table or QT table, which are like a Z table, but are based on agro mathematics, something like metalworking, it's plastic. I mean, there's a lot recycling almost basically. So GMT can also reside in design. You're looking at static. You're looking at fixed notions and abstract thinking for design, or let's say QR codes or something basic, barcodes. And those could be related to frequencies, mathematics, designs, a lot of things, right? Hazards could be related towards, putting two things together. And that's the biggest thing, which is like, putting cotton together with plastic, right? They will not mix, right? But the residual also makes them poisonous, right? So it's a question because you're putting something together that's finite, but then would need to be observed as though it is also data. There were sensitive data, but also data that is in demand. It needs to have immediate attention, is not liked or disliked, and we can have that set into a different category because it's liked and disliked and actualization or actual community awareness, actual relatability. There's a big thing there, which tells you it would be well over the functionability to have production, right? Costs, production needs. So it's set away in an affirmation way, contract NDA. So this topic is about, if courts could censor it, does it mean it's in a quartile or a function within the spectrum? So, I mean, in certain, Z tables or quartile strengths, I mean, you find data is an answer, or the question of mathematics that's based on maybe a Z table score is real. Doesn't make it false, but it does make it a negative correlation, and therefore a real live Z table low score matter. I mean, might just mean it's plural. It might mean that it's relatable to something that's fixed to save lives, right? Softening something would be one of those things, and it would cause less trauma, less problems. It would cause easier ease, right? In most ways, in certain ways, in most technologies that are helpful right now, they are modern technologies, or they might be technologies that help save power. It might be technologies that help keep things organized, right? So there's more math involved in that than anything. But you look at something like money. Money's always loose. It's always quartiled in any fashion except the first one. And then also the mathematics behind money is money is money. Money can equal money. Money can be multiplied by money. They can do many things because the operation there, the foilness, is everything, right? Money is the operation. So there's a big drive up between what we knew before, the know-ofs, and the know-hows now, right? So you're looking at the basic building blocks facts now versus strengths before. Strengths were based on arbitrary business protocol, business needs, business wants, business functions, and then business quickness, which we can relate to a westward talk. Business quickness is like surgery, or a surgeon creating a witness or a advocacy for their demediated or historical impact turning points, their value within empathy, not out of empathy, and then the reason to be successful. As you know now, the strength is about something that is just, reasonable, less concerning, foilable, creates an operation itself, and then is not outspoken, but is in principle limited. So we're still in this air gap technology, right? But before it was limited, which is dependent on something that was new, formidable, and modern, like a metal or a idea of a different spread of disease, right? So now we were showing or we're seeing a disease impact in the qualitative data that might just not be arranged at time and not be arranged at the Z table. We're looking at QTs here, measurements of not time, but something that was maybe formally incorrect, like oxygen, like looking at operative types of fuel. So there's many things you can look at in that situation, but they're also exact examples, and then therefore are samples to a sample to. Let's see what this is. I think we're already looking at it. Made to order. So we're not looking at made just to order, but we're looking at it as something like the Muffington orbital or MTO, but you're looking at the approximation. So it would be completely separate. It'd be the R chain. It'd be looking at residual keeping things cold, keeping things functional, keeping things within functional, not adaptation. A need. Yes, we would say need as though it is proximity based. It would be IO. It's proximity, but it has no level of power except the exact measure of the power and information. So we also learned something else there too. It's sensitive because it is a RTMO. RT. Let's look at that one because it's kind of like electricity, RTMO or alcohol. Real-time multi-purpose one-stage post-estimation. A fast computer vision framework. Key aspects include dual 1D heat maps, a dynamic coordinate classifier, and a YOLO-based architecture. Achieves creates a running schedule. I don't think this is the one we're looking for. Let's look for all definitions here. Research and Technology Management Office, Regional Traffic Management Office for Restaurant Table Mix Optimizer, it might be that one. TDME Management, Real-Time Minimum Overflow. And it might be the overflow is the counter clock is always IMTZ, like alcohol would be, or oxygen would be. Like a way to clear a service or chart. So I think we're looking at something more secure as a functional paradox almost. So IMTS, International Manufacturing Technology Show, International Merchandise Trade Statistics, improved mobile telephone system 1964, improved mobile telephone service, International Machine Tool Show, Information Management Technical Specialist, Innovative Management and Technology Services LLC, improved moving target simulator. There's one right there. Initial main test sets, Integraph or main test sets. Maybe. Integraph maintenance tracking system, integrated MOUT military operations of urbanized terrain training system, inland marine transportation system, international manufacturer training show. But we're looking at biology, chemical. Chemical. Let's see. The chemical is IMIDAZO 2 by 1 B. Thiazole, a heterocyclical organic ring system valued in pharmaceutical chemistry for its diverse biological properties. Fused ring system containing an imidazole ring and thiazole ring. Acts as a core moiety in agents showing antimicrobial, anti-infection, and anti-hemolytic properties. Extensively studied for low or for how it binds and quenches forensic carrier proteins like bovine serum and albumin PSA. And we're looking at poisons right there. If we're looking at, feces, we're looking at poisons. Can stand for the improved TEATS, IMTZ oscillator used in molecular mechanics to model potential energy and vibrational stretching of diatomic and polyatomic systems by conjugation, sometimes used as an abbreviated tag, IMTZ, for imidazole linked tetrazine derivatives in rapid click chemistry, click reactions such as IEDDA. If you're looking special MZ, please use your biological essays, spectral profile, and pathways. So look in biology or biology. It's rational enzyme database. IMTZ. Let's see. We're looking at strands. Maybe? Convergence zone. I don't think that's it. IMTZ enzyme. Enzyme. May refer to imidazole class of enthalamic anti-worm drugs, or it may be used a typo for UMZU, zoo enzymes, a commercial digestive supplement rather than a specific biological enzyme. So they do fit the mapping of QMT because they're self-absorbent. So these things will just shrink over time because they are worm-based and they're in a class of QTs as well. Let's see, functional, a major class of veterinary drugs used to treat parasitic worm infections in livestock like sheep, goats, and cattle. Context, recent studies track drug resistance patterns where parasite effectiveness against IMTZ groups has declined if you meant a digestive enzyme product. So, I mean, it is mobilization versus demobilization. So we're looking at New Age theory there. The reality there is big. So you're looking at transcripts, you're looking at resistive thinking, you're looking at PT, physical therapy, physical training. You're looking at a whole lot. Demobilization or mobilization, you're looking at the ethic of the sheepdog, right? So I think you learned something today as the sheepdog has a friend. And on a big spectrum, everybody has a friend for a reason, right? So that's the friendly, sad side of it. And the sad side is, maybe the dust going down, or, maybe the business going out of business, right? Or, something that's new. And obviously, the sun, coming up and things getting happy is one thing, but look at the whole world you're living in. You will always change your mind for the last reason at the last time. The last time I thought, no, there's always a mind change in you because you're always here and you're always finding a reason to do something because there's real conversation here. There's real things you can believe in. If you're in the Netflix channel and you're thinking about the documentary and it goes and saying, oh, hey, is it on right now? And you say, is it on? Let's do this. And then you say, okay, I was a special operator that came in and took down Al Qaeda while they came in the United States in 2011. And I'm the one that shot, and then it just goes blank like that. But then no, that's not a story. So the story. So we'll go back into the questions here, and we'll go and review the idea of what it is like to be in a mesh shooting, sort of. So let's go into the next principles here. What it means to be covered, what it means to time a collateral. That was a big one. We found some adjunct reasons to be so reliable. Why is there so much relatability? Relatability. Did I? Relatability. Is that a word? Relatability. It is certainly a word. Relatability. Relatability. Oh, my sorries. Relatability is the quality of being easy to connect with, understand, or feeling sympathy for through shared human existence. Experiences. Okay. Well, okay. Why is there so much relatability during mesh shooting? I mean, it's like many words: love, friendship, the hate for mass shooters, wanting to fix the world, wanting, concern for the world, concern for the community around you, wanting to save someone's life, the drive of the motion to get there. I mean, you just want to do it no matter what. It's the urge you have. It's what you need to solve. It's the mass shooting that you need to fix now, or else it can happen tomorrow, and it would be such a big deal if it kept on happening and happening and happening and happening. Right? It is the QMT for your drive of what you need, which is the driving edge of everything you need to do, which is fix everything right now. If there was relatability and none of it was catching with you, I don't know. Would you be antisocial? Would you not feel things? Would you feel, unjust, unkept? Would you be in a moment of pain? Maybe a pain moment, or maybe feeling sick, maybe feeling something else, maybe feeling unhearted, right? but the relatability there again is you're stiff, right? You're within something else in your life, right? But the quality of life, even if you were running the host for military gates, VPNs or something, and you were you know the relatability was not quite there for you, and you give yourself a moment of silence and say, just a moment of silence and say, yeah, there is relatability in this, and I'll stop now. Or there's relatability in this, and I'm going to save a lot of lives doing this. Or there's relatability in this, and I didn't put a lot of focus on this. Now I see that this is the best option. There's a lot of questions. I think Bertrand Russell would say a lot of this in his philosophical books. Saying the man or the human is not the mind of man. It's the belief system that is controlling the overall power in the world, and you have to find a way to relate to it. And I think that's maybe second year philosophy or something for a student, or second or the second class or something. But and you're finding a way not to be a human. You're finding a way to find not the hustle or bustle of life, but you're finding a way to just be there for life. You're no longer without the system. With the system, you are relatable now. I think that drive for relatability of mass shootings is because, or press or whatever it is, being there, saving someone's life is because you're in the now. Though it might be a bad habit, at first, when you're young. But when you're an adult, you start to realize, a lot of people could get more help. A lot of people could, find more reasons to live, and it could be a very, very big thing in the future. Because not only because it's a dynamic that needs to be understood, it's very misunderstood in the media, um, and I use the word underlined, but it's a big thing when you hear about mass shootings, when you see mass shootings, when you think about it all the time. Darndest thing. You could save someone's life today just speaking to them. You could have spoke to them, and it would have been a lot better, right? You could try all day long, but it won't always be there for you to try, tomorrow. So find a way to equip yourself into a better future, for a better process for people around you, for your own future, for everything you could try to do. Afford, you put every waking drop of sweat into saving someone's life. Of course, you don't want to hear that. The relatability, though. That's a good classic word. You just when they hear the story, when you do something better, it's going to be better in the long run, and that's what matters the most. That even if that was it, you feel kind of responsible in a way. Like you've been through that same exact situation, kind of like it needs to stop. I could stop that person right now if I'm on the phone right now, right? You say you're a computer programmer and you study philosophy or psychology. They have nothing to do with each other. That relatability is a sense of finding in the now purpose. That cutting edge story could have a second story behind it, and you're going to fix it now, right? You're a teacher, you're going to fix it now for a whole different bunch of reasons, right? So I think that pretty much solves it. I mean, if you're a judge, a lawyer, what's relatability? You uphold the justice now, right? There's no second question. There's no second architecture. There's the question of why. That's its own branch. It's its own reality. You have to find a way why and how. That's the most novice, the least unethical, right? You're not finding an answer now. You're finding a way to find the answer, to make the answer permanent and safe. So I think that's the biggest answer. Don't break apart the system in which is not broken. Find a way to fix the system in which hasn't been made, right? So the next question here is, how come someone can be better and someone can not be better during related to a mass shooting? Idea of gosh, what's the question? The idea of the question is mass shooting identities, right? So you're looking at why the mass shooter, how come they can be better? So someone can be better and someone cannot be better. Like financially, yeah, not financially, yeah. How come, that is an age-old question. If all the people in a town leave one day, would you be surprised? I mean, you'd be surprised as an adult, how many people can leave a town and never come back, right? That could be like 90% of the town. They could just never come back to the town and say, hey, I never will go back to that town. I will never talk to anyone in that town again. And that's a real question. Even the government can't solve that one. So there's that question. I mean, you can never find an answer for something so outspoken and soft, right? If you're secure right now, just think yourself as soft. You're a soft person because you haven't developed the sense to find that need. You found a need to do it because you found a way to be more secure in life. You found a way to be more prioritized to save someone's life or do something else. But the outspoken part is never the easy part. It's never the easy part because there's a lot of problems. Yeah, excommunication is one of those problems. It's probably the biggest problem out of all of them. If I was a music writer and I wrote every single top hit single ever, and you're kind of like, oh my gosh, I've never made a single dollar except on the spot dollars, from something and that makes me cash on hand limited, right? What category does that put me in? It would put me in a whole different place, right? So the possibility there is a whole situation, but that doesn't seem like a bad guy. It doesn't seem like you do something like that, but look at the relatability. Look at that. Look at the identity crisis. Look at the crisis in which you have an identity at all. If you're stumped and you never have an answer to anything, you're going to have to mark those things down for the rest of your life and say, they're not coming back. Even though I know it's hard and I know it's not an answer you're going to find, right? Even if it was me, I won't have that answer. I just know, those houses over there burned down and all them people left and they didn't come back, right? So, I mean, you could put on the honest look or the confused look, or you can put on the fake look and say, hey, here's the fake strategy, but it's not going to be a turning point for your civilization because in the Constitution, it might say the 15th Amendment is whatever. Well, what is the 15th Amendment, right? So let's go 15th Amendment prohibits the federal government and states from denying a citizen the right to vote based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude ratified on February 13th or February 3rd, 1870. It is the best last of the three Reconstruction Amendments. So, I mean, there you go. What is there besides voting? I mean, I don't think that exists. We just had a Supreme Court lawsuit from Donald J. Trump saying, people don't have the right to vote by mail-in. So, the segregation thing, is one thing. The women, having the equal right to vote, but I don't think the abstract or adjunctive has been able to be mediated for the entire time because it's the foundation of the Constitution, but never been proven. So it's a very huge, hard question about hardship itself, and it is not a one that is not bitter. It's a bitter question to the top to the end. So why is there so much? How come one is better than the other, though? I mean, you got to think about it like a computer would in a way, right? You're asking a question, you're saving the moment, you're saving the information down. People don't have that liability, don't have that relationship. And that's what computers have. That's modern computing, and that's why we have it. So there's the answer to that, right? Plus one. But if you're looking at the modern principle of computing, it doesn't do any of it, right? You are buying data. You are buying significant reasons to do something. You are testing the question, testing the ground, and you're choosing the situation in which you're reading into the marketing schema that says, hey, this is the fine print, and this says, I'll do it. I'll do it for you. But I'm not going to do it for you. I'm not going to help you with your data. I'm not going to help you do this. I'm not going to help you do that. And the government say, yeah, they do this. They promised it for a long time, but they say, oh, they didn't do that one. They didn't do that one. They didn't do that one. They didn't. It goes on and on. It's infinite. So when you ask your resolver or your DNS resolver, whatever it is, you ask the website, oh, can I get this spot? And say, oh, can you do this? It's not their data. It tells you, that's that. But the data is separate from it. The data is it's separate. It says, oh, hey, this is our company disclosure, and we'll leave it at that. But is it? I mean, no, it's not. Because basically you're asking the company to save your time for you. You save, I want this. I want this now. I want to put it on layaway, as a kid you'd say, and you're like, no, no, we can't do that for you. We can't put it on layaway for you. No. Or they'll put like, no. Or they'll say like, the real, honest, concern there is not you, but it's, what it is. So they won't really do much about it and kind of plug numbers in them. What does it say? It says their system is being tested, or it's absolute, basically. Their computer, their mindset, their sales are right there. We won. Pay us their money and we'll be on our way. Kind of against the law, a little bit. like that, objective. I mean, I don't think the government really does too much of that unless it's really, hard coded in there. But the probability there is like, no system is correct, no system is accurate, but the accurate system is also incorrect because it's supposed to be correct. It's always incorrect because you can see it being incorrect, but the system always says it's correct. That's it on the paper as correct. So you do see that at least, and you do see they don't hold it accountable to say, doesn't matter. You tell it to them, it doesn't matter. You tell it to the product market, it doesn't matter. They say eventually they're like, yeah, we had a fault in the product. They said, we'll do it. Same as anybody, really. But they use the long strings. They say, hey, this is the big thing. You put it in the big container. This is a small thing. You put it in the small container. Like we as people do the same thing. We mediate. We're not supposed to break the rules. This is launder money. But the reality there is what you're going to do. I mean, don't blame it on the victimization. Blame it on, say, the modernization, right? The system is not meant to do that. It's not meant to function like that. It's not meant to, paralyze you with radioactive. The same principle as poison. Same principle as something that is non-linear. Not the same thing as lean. Lean is more like artwork. Say, it's not supposed to, bioactively, radiate you at work. It's not supposed to, not be coded in the system. It's not supposed to be hubbed. When you think big technology improvement, think old technology improvement because it's separate than everything else because it doesn't radiate it. It doesn't do a lot of things that it shouldn't do. So there's your answer. It shouldn't do that because it can't do that because it should not be the honest truth. Does mass shootings radiate your mind when you hear them? I would say exempt. I would honestly say radiation for mass shootings is completely exempt from it because they're just now real. They're just. It doesn't matter if they're fake, fiction. You put the old '90s record song from the early 2000s on it. It's my beat. No, it matters now, right? So get your mind off like this or that. It's now. You're thinking about the now, right? So don't think about the null, the absolute. Don't think about the unfortunate in that kind of terminology. That's bad news. That's what I think. Bad news. Boo. Get out of here. You're homeless now. Good news. Yes. So there you go. That's the answer to that. So last question here. Can a mass shooter have immunity? What a crazy question. Do you think a mass shooter have immunity? I mean, what would I say? If someone said that to me, I'd say, and privately, obviously, I would say, go look them in the eyes and ask them, can a mass shooter have immunity? Doesn't sound good. Sounds really bad. Reminds me of kind of like using a notepad versus like a computer pad. So like you have immunity on this one. It has exact memory all the way to Microsoft. This one, no, this is just under data and only the FBI can have it. You got to listen to the This American Life episode about the data going all the way over to Microsoft. But did you really pitch this story and it didn't really take it? Yeah. But the principle here is, can a mass shooter have immunity? I mean, what if you're a good mass shooter? Can you have immunity if you take it too far and they can never document? Like, well, look. We found out this was very difficult to do. Do you understand? You now have immunity. You're like, no, I don't think so, guys. Like, I don't want the immunity. I want to get arrested, or like I want a hero badge, and here's my hero badge, and it says, I'm not really gonna hesitate anymore for this question. Like, it's like switching from ChatGPT over to Grok and saying like, I don't really want this question, or like up to Gemini and saying like, hey, Gemini, what happened? Saying like, our data servers like stopped making videos for shorts, but like, it doesn't really matter anymore because it's not a big deal, right? So, to me, it might be a big deal for my little, enterprise business for YouTube. But for YouTube, it might say, hey, just because we were explaining it one day, we sketched off the list and said like, you brought up the sketchy question about immunity. I mean, I'm joking, obviously, and don't report me for that. But, the principle is same for Facebook. Like, do you have immunity in the case of like you're being a victim and saying like, do I have immunity to remove my Facebook profile even though it's private information? The mass shooter took my phone, started using my data, scraped it, and then threw it in the ocean or something, or broke my phone, and I no longer have access to passwords and things like that. And I was a mass shooting multiple times. Like that's a tough one. I mean, where would you go for that? I mean, I would go to the True Blue forums, True Blue with Chris Hansen, and say, "Hey, what you going to do in that situation?" These are private videos. This is a segment about these initial funny questions, or just the trilogy of questions that will never seem to be answered with life, but just directly need to be answered and approached. They're weird questions. So, can a mass shooter have immunity? Has it formidably been known? Is the question. If you've ever known a mass shooter has had immunity, I mean, you're kind of like looking at, like, let's say Ronald Reagan's like shooter or something. Like, he's gotten out of prison. He didn't kill the guy. I mean, eventually, some people were killed, I think. But I mean, because of the death of the bullet from the bullet wound over time. But the reality there is like, me saying like Ronald Reagan's a good friend of me, and like I don't want him to have immunity, but I want him to be insane. The shooter, I think he's insane because that's what my sweetheart would say. She's insane, and I want an insane person to get treatment, right? But the reality there is kind of like yeah and no. But then you look at the spectrum of like this is the unknown figure who's a victim. I mean, or you can say like the hero was the mass shooter who took down like Al Qaeda or like something like that. Would it be intervention or like can they interweave? I mean, from all these little lessons we see, they kind of don't interweave at all. None of these interweave really very much. It was soft spoken. They had relatability to every single little thing about them, kind of connected in a way. Kind of like like if a volcano blew up and like you saw something new in the world, kind of like the song started playing. You're like, oh, whoa, no, not today. Or like kind of like, whatever. But, the reality of that is like kind of like, ants, like, thriving for not sugar, but like B12 and like making some sort of new chemical, maybe formic acid, maybe something else. But, the reality, and I've got to keep saying reality or not say it at all. I'm just tired. You can have immunity somewhat and you can't really. It's not the same question. But when you look at accounting and you look at the physical dimensions of, true, false, false or true, it's almost as though it can go infinite, right? So, I mean, if it was that simple, one has immunity and one does not, wouldn't, right? So, question about trunking, about signals, about intelligence, about gathering, but then, about murdering innocent people or murdering murderers. Has it ever been approached before? Has this question ever been real before? Murdering murderers. I mean, you look at World War II. I mean, you can rack up some kills, right? But is it ever talked that way as though the murderer is the soldier by murdering murderers? I never heard of it. Is that outspoken truth? I mean, maybe Vietnam, but again, I've never heard of it. I maybe heard of bug spray fixing your problems, or like people who are dumb doing dumb things, or good people doing good things, or regular people being there, I guess, or bad gang members doing bad gang members. And so, it's not relatable just because it's relatable. It has to be relatable for a reason. I mean, that's the whole point. I mean, mass shooter having immunity, like a triumph slogan, like your Diago or Argo in these fields and these plots in Fargo, and it doesn't go too well, right? Kind of like Birdman from the Renaissance, or the man with the mask going to kill people. I mean, it's never going to go good. It shouldn't go good, I think. But the believability there is a relationship that shouldn't be shared. Right? So you're looking at maybe medicine. You're looking at disease again. So I mean, looking at all these facts and figures, it's very questionable. Would this courthouse been in lockdown? Would it have been, so real that the emotion of the judge would have been paranoid to begin with? I mean, word salad maybe, or video didn't exist then, or his court smelled like tobacco smoke or sickness, right? Uh, so there's that. I mean, go to a regular court school or court celled school. It smell like tobacco smoke, cigar smoke. It smell like you're gonna have go into cardiac arrest in moments. So sounds like a bad idea to me. But immunity wise, why don't you just leave the building, go back to the court. Maybe the court has been plastered with drugs and they're deporting drugs there or people. I mean, all the time. There's at least one room to get immune from a little bit, right? So I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's confusing to me. I mean, go on the chat and go talk to Chris Hansen. Go on, the idea of finding a new revelation. Is it true? Can you be half wit? Can you be half dorky? Can you be half untrue? Can you be unsupportive of life? That's the bigger thing, I think. I mean, even from a French colloquial, understanding of saying like retorted or doka, it's the same principle, right? You're something misused, right? I mean, you're saying untracked, unfounded, unclued, uncluttered, right? Or approximate if you're docked, right? But it doesn't mean the same thing you docked as someone else. A docked someone else might say, hey, it's it's oiled, it's wadded, you're docked. Duck kid eye, kid. But does it mean it's real? Does it mean it's a race show? Doesn't mean it's segregated, but it is segregated, right? So can a mass shooter have immunity? Can you actually mass shoot all these people and get immunity? I don't think so. I don't think easy A plus, no immunity. Let me write that one down. We go on the A. Oh, I'm sorry. We go on the A plus reason there. Not an internship, not a class, but you just get an A plus for the hell of it. So what you got a cybersecurity degree, but I got a A plus pretty much. Let me just make that really, really known right now. A plus is kind of a big deal, but I'm not sure if you heard of it before. You get an A plus. So why? I have no idea. But your reasons to live might be the immunity itself. You get immunity, but I've heard of it before. Can a mass shooter get immunity? I've heard it recently. You could do about everything and everything to be a mass shooter except load the gun and shoot and then be the mass shooter, right? So I mean, what if you loaded the gun and then you got shot? I don't know. Or, you load the gun for the mass shooter. The mass shooter went out, and then they shot a bunch of people. And he came back like 12 years later or 2 years later, and like, oh, no, you got immunity. Then I'd say you got your second easy A. So that's what I think about it. The most corrupt. And I'll write that down. The most corrupt I spelled that wrong. Is the most corrupt. Did. Perfect. So, I mean, no, let's see. The most corrupt isn't the most corrupted, but it is the most corrupt because it is, it's like saying, like, I did something that is not normal, but yet again, you got like a business going on, but you got no answer for the business. It's just called well connected. Or like, you'll find out eventually what's going on. Things will become more relevant over time. But they are well connected. And they wouldn't say the other thing, but it's like as if like you went to trial and said, here's my lawyer. He told me everything I need to do, and he's going to represent me in the case. But basically, in my case, I said, what did I say? I'm over it. This is over. I didn't do it. I didn't need it, and this is my feeling. So, I'm not going to put the name stake on it or the reality, but I'll say, what's my back end proposition for that one? I'm 09. Oh, you didn't see that one. I didn't see that one coming. I'm 09. In principle, you didn't have what you had without me, but you had everything you had by resonating all the data for yourself. So, in the head it works for me, but I just say, hey, stay positive. Even if you were at a trial and you're speaking to the murderer, and just is like, hey, stay positive. Like, buddy, like, maybe one day you'll wake up out of it and this will be all solved. Right. So I mean, stay positive. That's what I would say to a murderer. Like, if a murderer killed, like, whoever, I'd say, like, hey, get some sleep, and you know, um, get better, or whatever it is. Like, like the song that plays in your mind, like, get better. Like, lyrics to that is the best. But, if you're going to get immunity, really, I mean, think about it like, it's crazy talk. Like, to outside world, you'd be like, that's crazy. Are you challenging me to a duel or something? Or like some other insane novice idea? Like, I mean, would you quit your job? Or like, how do you survive a hospice review, or a review by the government and says, like, hey, um, you didn't go and get fired for your job for doing and believing this stuff, but you got immunity. You didn't get malpractice. You got immunity, and then that. But like, this doesn't have to happen. Like, that it's a little sketch to me. I mean, I would probably get malpractice automatically. If I was a lawyer, would you be able to represent yourself pro bono in that situation? Or would you consider insane for taking money from a victim? I mean, yeah, like I got hit by a car. I'm in a wheelchair, and I take like $2 million from this girl. Like, go deal, but it's sometimes the most difficult because of some things. I don't know. I'm not the one to create financial standards and reasons. It's basically off limits for me, but the real reason there is, having some sort of, emotional stake in things. I think that's what really matters, and that could teach you probably a lot, right? So, I mean, I'm not trying to orchestrate anything, and this is all, mediation, or your ideas of, talking points to talk about these ideas, right? So you should maybe not get immunity after all when you think about mass shooting. You should not, if we're looking at the first question here, should the courts be able to forget about mass shooting survivors? They shouldn't forget about mass shooting survivors, even though they do. They do forget about mass shooting survivors every day, and they basically say it to your face, right? It might not be an endearing question. It might be an endearing question of the hearts. It might be sadness that will strike your heart at any time, or in the mediation, like what you could have done differently from now, right? Mass shootings are not funny. They're not something that is, for the heart, right? To take, it's not for the heart, for the king of heart, right? So, a mass shooting is taking much more of your time than you would want, right? But it's actually taking someone's life, right? It's not a joke to mess around with. It's not funny words. It's not something to forget about. It's not something you would necessarily have to ask 1,000 questions and say, hey, I'm going to rate this on a scale of numbers. I mean, it might be a little bit, but it might be taking it too far, right? Mass shooting might be taking it too far because it's not just hysterical. It's not just questionable. It's not just against time itself, or the idea about trying to find some sort of open answer that's within the time frame, or the reality of the community. It's something bigger than that, way bigger than that, right? Communication, attempt to save someone's life. Those are not joking matters. Those are lifelong pursuits, and that's the pursuit of justice right there, right? So, I mean, if you were ever listening to this, I mean, you were going home and saying, like, gosh, this is really changing my life and ethic. But things, maybe think about your life and ethic a little bit, stronger. Right? You are the strong willpower that holds you together. And, it's not coming from me, it's coming from, others in this civilization. I might be more aware than others. I might, keep my eyes on my mindset, and know better. I know better reasons, but, someone might need, a better, version of the story, or you might need, more courage to do something. But if you see something wrong, and it might be, the simple things in life, the quick fix, the DIY that goes wrong. That's something, the haywire employee that, just keeps on lying, maybe not lying, but, keeps on, keeping dishonest truths to save someone's life. Maybe, Maybe it's something else. Maybe, it's the situation we're living with rats and cats. Maybe it's, being honest or being open about someone or being, nice to someone, right? Maybe it might not take one person. Maybe it takes two people, right? But that the question of your surrounding is one thing, emotional statement. It might be the story itself. It might be something you're trying to find a way out of, right? Finding that way to find necessary steps to find a way, whether it's technology or an interest, not to lie, but find some sort of way to do better for the better good of life, right? That's important, right? Not forgetting about something, not making up a lie, not creating a way to quit something, but following through with something because it's the right thing to do for the right reason, right? If you've got the name of your favorite book, and maybe it's time to research your book again and give it to somebody else. Maybe it's time to do something new in life, but maybe in a more organized way. If you tried every last option, if you explain every last thing to your friends or your loved one or your family member, maybe it's important to find a way to keep up with the status quo in a more appropriate way, right? Maybe it's not for someone to explain something that you have no honest want for, right? Your wants are your wants and your needs are your needs, and they can't be interrupted, right? Your idea about what is fear and what is real are real, right? They're real because they're going to follow you for the rest of your life, and they're going to be honest things for honest reasons, right? You're forgetting about one thing, one little statement might be a game changer one day, but it might create a bigger ethic for the rest of your life, right? And that's the thing that you might teach your student, you might teach your family member, you might, go and make those your vows for your marriage. There might be, the realities behind it, your hope, your family, your heart, your heartache, everything painful in your life, your control, your loss of ego, your mapping of things, but your central, identity, that's always going to stay the same, whether you want to save someone's life or you want to take it, right? And control of ego and willpower, though, those are stakes of your life that should always find some sort of necessary steps to ground, right? It doesn't mean a person is going to ground you. It means you're going to find a way to ground yourself in a way that's going to be suitable for you for the rest of your life. And if you think it's the easy step to find no groundedness at all and just quit, and find a better way to quit. Find a way that somebody can reach you. Somebody can find that you're alive. Find a way that you are not, the one that is counted out of the whole equation, and that you're the one that's no longer going to be there, right? You're going to be the offspring or the situation that is just not there anymore. The outlier that is just counted over and over and over and over again because you have no real reason to be believable. Right? In certain ways, yeah. Certain ways, no. In certain ways, all you have in life is cash, right? And that can go for any single person on earth, but all that does say is that you're creating something new, right? It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means you need some sort of laugh. You need some way to get lifted up in a way that can help you, right? Don't put it on someone else to find, a reason to live and work, right? Don't find a reason to find a way to escape from everything at all, right? Find a way to stay sane, to let people escape as well, but find a way to create a functionable liveliness about the community. Maybe not drinking. Drinking is the worst situation, right? Hardest of all is the hardest for your brain. If that's what you want to hear. But, the same thing is for drugs. Drugs could cause, mass chaos in your brain. So they go clutter, can go crazy. The synapses might go crazy. But, the reality, though, is, it's pressing time. It's pressing need. It's pressing, the version of the story that can be much better suited, right? It could be much more ethical to do something that might be the best interest for you and your community or just life itself, right? Just don't end there. Don't let the bubble bee jam you on the neck and say, that's your hope and arrow for today, and that's it. And so, peace is about peacekeeping. Peace talking is about keeping peace as well between two parties, and that's what I give it to myself. Sometimes is getting in the way of two situations or two conversations at the same time to mediate bigger things in their life to keep them interested in the conversation. And I think a lot of people do that, and it's a very real thing, right? You need to learn interest. You need to learn time. You need to find a way to not find a solution between, let's say, assets and liability. Those are basic blocks there. But finding a way to not connect all the dots for no reason, but listen to people as they're talking to you, right? If they are asking for an emergency, if they're asking for directions for a map, if they have a chopping language, or if they have language that is not understandable, another language, a mumble, maybe ask yourself, how to be more polite, be nice to people, be polite to people. Be away from something that is awful in your mind that could help you a whole lot, and that won't hurt you for the rest of your life, right? So just think about the things you can do that might not be awful, but not be in the long run, because it's not going to hurt you forever, right? One way of putting it. But the other way of putting it is, finding a way to make the best of yourself, best of your situation, and finding a way to rise to the occasion, and finding, inner peace, finding inner strength for the community. It's not going to stop tonight if, that's what you're thinking, the pain, right? It's going to stop when it can stop. It took Martin Luther King 200 speeches plus to write a good one, right? It took, his friend, a preacher, 50 churches to get burned down before he could, marry his wife, right? So, think about the story behind the story, and how it could affect you, how it could, damage you, I guess, right? But how you can stay safe, interloping as well, finding a way, not for mass media, mass frenzy, but finding a way to be connected in a way that is more ordinary, more reasonable, more safe for people. Don't ask for something you can't have or handle, or just have it all, right? Find a way to find precaution where you can find caution, right? So that's my story for today, and that's what we reviewed, and that was the topic. And the topic was, should the courts be able to make people forget about mass shooting survivors? So I want to say thank you very much. Peace. It is Wednesday, July 29th, 11:44 p.m. PST. Thanks again. You have a good rest of your night.